Warrior Lore. Chapter 2979. As for the four of you, I'm sure you've already grasped the first opportunity on the path of cultivation. Now, you've all reached the foundation establishment stage. Moreover, you've also shown your talents in this Taoist sword battle. In the future, you'll definitely have a smooth journey in your respective sections. You'll have a bright future ahead of you, Qing Liuzi said with a smile. However, in my opinion, this is not enough. You still need more help. The cultivation of a high-level cultivator was not guaranteed to be successful by just relying on a single sect. Only by gathering the strengths of 100 schools of thought could he succeed. Now, because of your outstanding performance in the Taoist sword battle, the second opportunity on the path of cultivation has automatically been delivered to you. Qing Liuzi finally revealed his true purpose. For a cultivator in the intermediate stage of the original infant stage, it was indeed difficult to beat around the bush. Li Zongbao was stunned. He really didn't understand. After listening to Qing Liuzi's words, it seemed that he wanted to invite them to join Tongmu City. However, how could Tongmu City compare to the Utopia faction? Even the Imperial Thunder sect couldn't compare to it. However, looking at Qing Liuzi's serious look and the way he spoke just now, it didn't seem like he was joking. Cough, cough, senior. Li Zongbao didn't dare to let Qing Liuzi finish his words. He hurriedly smiled and said, I'm a disciple of the Utopia faction. Junior brother Xiao Maoxiao is a disciple of the Xuanyan school. Junior sister Kai Yuxia is a disciple of the Huanhua sect. Junior brother Xiao Hua is also a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Haha, Zongbao. Qing Liuzi naturally understood Li Zongbao's thoughts. He raised his hand and said, I understand what you mean. I've been in charge of Tongmu City for many years. Naturally, I also hope that the city can produce disciples with outstanding achievements, profound cultivation, and boundless prospects like the four of you. Moreover, I'm afraid that Yu Ming has already conveyed my intentions. I'm already very happy that you can come to my Tongmu City often. How could this old man possibly covet it? If that's the case, not to mention that the leaders of the four sects won't agree, even the other cultivation sects will come knocking on our door. Yes, Li Zongbao was even more confused. He did not understand what was going on. Actually, he didn't really want the city lord token of Tongmu City that Chen Yuming had taken out. After all, that person's hands were short, and he had a soft mouth. Qing Liuzi's methods of currying favor were too powerful. He really didn't want to have anything to do with Tongmu City. Unfortunately, the City Lord medallion was Qing Liuzi's face. You didn't give a nascent soul cultivator any face before leaving Tongmu City. Do you think you can leave Tongmu City calmly? That was why Li Zongbao had hesitated for a moment and had no choice but to accept it. But now, trouble had indeed arrived. Senior, please speak clearly. We truly do not understand. Li Zongbao did not look at Xiao Hua, knowing that this fellow would not speak. Instead, he looked at Xiao Mao and Fairy Hongxia. As expected, the two of them also had a baffled look on their faces. This old man is about to give the four of you the answer. However, before I speak, the four of you have to swear a blood oath that you won't tell anyone about what happened today. Qing Liuzi nodded slightly and said calmly, Li Zongbao turned pale with fright. Even Xiao Mao and Fairy Hongxia's faces turned pale as they panicked. Senior, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He knew that he had to speak. He raised his head and said, I wonder if what Senior is talking about involves our sect? Involves the interests of our sect? Of course not. This old man is also from the Dao sect. How could I do such a thing? Qing Liuzi's tone was still calm. However, this matter is a secret and cannot be known by others. Otherwise, why would this old man come personally? All right, I swear a blood oath. When Xiao Hua heard this, he knew that the four of them were just fish on the chopping block. What choice did he have? Since it wouldn't endanger the interests of the sect and the Dao sect, what was there to be afraid of? Seeing Xiao Hua calmly swear a blood oath, Li Zongbao and the rest had no choice but to do so. Then, Qing Liuzi said, Have the four of you heard of the Immortal Alliance? Immortal Alliance. Li Zongbao was the first to lose his voice in shock. The city lord is from the Immortal Alliance? That's right. This old man was lucky enough to gain the favor of the Immortal Alliance's leader. He invited this old man to join the Immortal Alliance and take charge of Tongmu City at the border of country Shi to resist the attack of the sword cultivators of country Huan. Qing Liuzi not only did not hide it, he also said it with extreme pride. This junior has indeed heard of the Immortal Alliance. Li Zongbao was a little absent-minded as he said softly, "The Immortal Alliance is an alliance formed by many nascent soul elders and above. It is the alliance that commands our Dao sect to resist the attack of the devil cultivators in the demon-resisting valley." Not only Li Zongbao, even Fairy Hong Xia's face was filled with disbelief as she looked at Qing Liuzi in shock. It was as if this kind of opportunity could not appear at this time and place. On the other hand, Xiao Mao was a little confused. Like Xiao Hua, his face was filled with confusion. Hee. Qing Liuzi laughed. Since Zongbao knows, that's for the best. This old man said that this is the greatest opportunity for our Dao sect cultivators. If we can join the Immortal Alliance, our status will be much higher. Furthermore, there are many cultivation techniques in the Immortal Alliance, and they are always shared. What your sect doesn't have, the Immortal Alliance can provide. Where can you find such a good opportunity? This old man made you take the blood oath for your own good. But, faced with such temptation, Li Zongbao could not help but hesitate again. He asked, "This kind of great opportunity, this junior is naturally fearful. You can say that I dare not believe it. I only know that the people in the Immortal Alliance are all cultivators above the nascent soul stage. We have not even cultivated to the golden core stage." "You are right." Qing Liuzi nodded. "The people that the Immortal Alliance recruits are all elites of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. They are only nascent soul cultivators. However, the Immortal Alliance can also make an exception for the disciples with exceptional aptitudes in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. The 4 of you are the most outstanding disciples in the Great War of Dao Sword. Your future is limitless. Especially." At this point, Qing Liuzi said earnestly, "If the 4 of you join the Immortal Alliance, you can borrow the strength of the Immortal Alliance. It is equivalent to adding wings to a tiger. When the envoy of the Immortal Alliance came to me, I didn't believe it at all, just like you. However, it turns out that I made the right choice. I can't say too much about the benefits of joining the Immortal Alliance. After you agree, you will naturally understand. Joining the Immortal Alliance. Is there anything else we need to do?" Xiao Mao was a little tempted and asked in a low voice. "There is nothing to do," Qing Liuzi said with a smile. "In addition to swearing allegiance to the Immortal Alliance, maybe you have to fight on behalf of the Immortal Alliance in the 1,000-year battle of the Imperial Demon Valley. I think with the cultivation of the 4 of you, the Immortal Alliance will definitely not send you to the Imperial Demon Valley. You can rest assured." "Are there really only such conditions?" Xiao Mao was almost overjoyed. He was different from the other 3. Xiao Hua was already in the nascent soul stage. He could never reach the level of Xiao Hua. Hongxia Fairy had obtained the inheritance of Holy Mother Peacock and was favored by the sect leader of the Huanhua sect. As for Li Zongbao, he was one of the best in the Utopia faction. Now that he had the immortal slaying whip, his cultivation in the future was immeasurable. Only Xiao Mao himself, although he had obtained the bloodline power of God Shibai in the millions of Ming Mountains, he had to face the soul cultivators of Shibai village and his enemy in the nascent soul stage. With his background in the Xuanyan school, although he had obtained military exploits because of Xiao Hua, he could also imagine that, in the years to come, these military exploits would fade with the passage of time, and there would be people who would constantly forget his glory. In particular, if the enemy of the nascent soul stage really came to the Xuanyan school, the Xuanyan school might not be a solid backing for him. The Immortal Alliance seemed to be the best choice for Xiao Mao. Whether it was for Xiao Mao's cultivation or for his revenge, Xiao Hua frowned. He had always believed that there was no such thing as a free elixir in this world, and there would never be a rejuvenation elixir falling from the sky to the head of a female cultivator. It was true that the 4 of them had outstanding military exploits, but compared to other people, their cultivation bases might not be much higher. What caused him to be even more unwilling was that no matter if it was cultivation techniques, spirit stones, spirit pills, or the like, Xiao Hua was self-sufficient now. The existence of the thunder-controlling sect had already caused him to be slightly uncomfortable, so wouldn't the Immortal Alliance be even more uncomfortable for him? Xiao Hua's current thoughts were to hurry back to the Imperial Thunder sect and hide in the Heavenly Thunder Valley to cultivate. If he didn't cultivate for 8 to 10 years, he definitely wouldn't come out. But if Xiao Mao agreed, should he also agree? And if there really was a problem with the Immortal Alliance, Xiao Mao was all alone, and he was also a Middle Foundation establishment disciple. What power could he have to resist? Cough cough, Xiao Hua coughed twice. Just as he was about to speak, his heart suddenly quivered. A thought flashed through his mind like lightning. Vice Alliance leader Luo. That's right. It was the Changbai sect disciple who had already died in Xiao Hua's hands. Hu Guan and I. Xiao Hua had obtained a keepsake from his storage pouch. Wasn't there a word, fall, with a powerful aura inside? Wasn't it the so-called Vice Alliance leader Luo? When he thought of this, Xiao Hua's expression changed greatly. Since Hu Guan and I was a member of the Immortal Alliance, then Daoist Jingxi was naturally also a member of the Immortal Alliance. Wouldn't he be tired of living if he threw himself into the hands of his enemy for no reason? Xiao Hua could absolutely imagine that in front of the so-called Vice Alliance leader Luo. If Daoist Jingxi wanted to take his life, Vice Alliance leader Luo wouldn't possibly stop it. Huh. Xiao Hua, do you have anything to say? Qing Liuzi asked curiously. This old man knows that you were born as a loose cultivator, and it wasn't easy for you to become a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Moreover, in the myriad Thunder Valley of the Imperial Thunder sect's Thunder Palace, you don't seem to be welcomed. For others, this opportunity might not be much, but for you, it's still precious. This old man doesn't want you to miss such a good opportunity. -11. Chapter 2980. Senior. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. We're merely Foundation establishment cultivators. You've suddenly sent such a colossus like the Immortal Alliance to us. We really feel that it's too sudden. Humph, I won't hide it from you. The cultivators recruited by the Immortal Alliance today are at least in the early Golden Core stage. Moreover, their aptitudes are especially outstanding. Qing Liuzi seemed to have heard the evasiveness in Xiao Hua's tone and said coldly, the four of you are the first Foundation establishment cultivators recruited by the Immortal Alliance. Especially Xiao Hua and Xiao Mao, who are only in the Middle Foundation establishment stage. Just you wait. You can laugh to yourselves. Do you know why I've only come now? Why didn't you show up just now? Although you've contributed greatly to the Great War of Dao and Sword, you're still far from being worthy of my personal reception. I didn't intend to meet you. However, just a moment ago, a messenger from the Alliance Master of the Immortal Alliance passed by my Tongmu city. When this old man received him, he mentioned the four of you. The Alliance Master of the Immortal Alliance likes talented and capable people the most. When the messenger heard about the four of you, he immediately decided to invite the four of you to join the Immortal Alliance. Humph. I was stunned for a long time at that time. If it weren't for the Immortal Alliance envoy sincerity, I wouldn't have bothered to come here. Hearing Qing Liuzi mention the envoy of the Immortal Alliance, Xiao Hua's heart was as clear as a mirror. He wanted to ask if the envoy of the Immortal Alliance was the envoy of the Immortal Alliance vice leader Luo. However, he also knew that as long as he said that, he would definitely reveal a flaw. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to walk out of this Jingtai pavilion today. Senior. Since he had made up his mind, Xiao Hua smiled apologetically and said, Junior's cultivation is the lowest among the four of us. These merit points were naturally given to me by Senior Marshal Brotherly. I don't have the aptitude that Senior mentioned, so I still want to return to the Imperial Thunder sect and improve my cultivation. Once I reach the nascent soul stage, I'll be bold enough to meet the city lord and recommend myself to him. Even though Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia did not know the exact reason behind Xiao Hua's rejection, they still bowed respectfully and said with a flattering smile, we have just returned from our training outside and do not know the current situation in the cultivation world. If Senior is willing to allow us to return to the sect and have a good rest, after some time, we will give Senior an answer. How about that? As for Xiao Mao, he bit his lips and his heart was filled with complicated emotions. He believed in Xiao Hua's choice, but he couldn't bear to give up the strong support of the Celestial Alliance. He didn't know what to do. Humph. You don't know what's good for you. I gave you face, but you don't want it. Qing Liuzi's expression changed instantly. Immediately, the entire Jingtai pavilion flashed with light. A strong hurricane was generated from Qing Liuzi's body. Like a huge palm, it tore the paulownia flowers under everyone as if they were thin paper. Xiao Hua and the others couldn't stand still. They flew up and tried to balance themselves in the strong wind. Then, they fell to the ground. Buzz, there was another buzzing sound, as if Qing Liuzi was angry. A strong pressure came from the sky and pressed down on the four of them. With several boom, boom, boom sounds, the four of them fell to the ground awkwardly and couldn't move at all. Damn it, as expected. Even after meeting his own father, he is still a stranger. Xiao Hua saw Qing Liuzi's face change like flipping a book and couldn't help but smile bitterly. How can an ordinary nascent soul stage cultivator casually attack a Foundation Establishment junior like this? It seems that my words are not words. Qing Liuzi's figure stood like a pillar in the wild wind. His gloomy voice reverberated in the Jingtai pavilion. Alas, what should I do? Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and didn't know what to do. He knew that he couldn't fight with Qing Liuzi in Tongmu City, because even if he used all his skills, he couldn't win against a nascent soul stage cultivator. Maybe. I can only do it temporarily. I have to pass this test first? Just as Xiao Hua thought of this, Xiao Mao next to him shouted, Senior, Junior is willing to join. Haha, City Lord. Just as Xiao Hua was thinking about how to open his mouth, a hoarse voice came from the door of the hall. Don't be angry. These disciples are only children. They don't understand the dangers of the three kingdoms, and they don't know the benefits of the Immortal Alliance. Won't you scare them by making such a big fuss? Even if they reluctantly agree, won't they blame the Alliance Master in their hearts? Then, a cultivator in camouflage walked in. When Qing Liuzi saw someone come in, his face was a little embarrassed. After all, he had already promised in front of the emissary, but he didn't expect Xiao Hua and the others to be so ignorant of the situation, which made him lose face. Although Xiao Mao spoke in the end, he still couldn't keep his face. However, he still had a cold face and said indifferently, This is what I did. It has nothing to do with the Immortal Alliance. It has nothing to do with the Alliance Master. Haha, City Lord, please calm down. The messenger waved his hand, and his laughter was a bit strange. My Immortal Alliance is an open and above-board place. If we want to recruit disciples, then we have to let these disciples join us willingly. If they have a trace of dissatisfaction, wouldn't it go against the original intention of the Alliance Master to establish the Immortal Alliance? Haha, the Alliance Master is a magnanimous person. I can't compare to him. Qing Liuzi waved his sleeve, and the wind in the entire Jingtai pavilion was extinguished. Qing Liuzi himself also landed on the ground. Xiao Hua and the others stood up from the ground in a sorry state and bowed to the envoy, greeting him. Forget it. The emissary flicked his sleeves and said, What the City Lord said just now was what I told him. Our Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master intended to do. You are all elites of the Great War of Tao and Sword. Although you are only at the Foundation Establishment realm, you are barely qualified to join our Immortal Alliance. If you are willing, I can recruit you on behalf of our Alliance Master. If you are not willing, I won't force you. You can leave immediately. Of course, you have already made a blood oath. Don't mention today's matter to others. Hearing this, Xiao Hua looked at the mystery he couldn't see through and said in disbelief, May I ask the envoy, if I don't agree to join the Immortal Alliance, can I leave now? Also, if I think it through and want to join in the future. Yes, this old man's words are naturally true. The City Lord was just disappointed that you didn't live up to his expectations. He was afraid that you would lose this second chance in your life. That's why he was so angry. If you don't want to join, you can leave now. No one will stop you. The envoy said in a hoarse voice, Of course, you are the rare elites of the three kingdoms. Our Immortal Alliance is the best place for you to return. However, you can easily join the Immortal Alliance today. If you regret it in the future, haha, it won't be easy to join again. You must pass the 10 great trials of our immortal alliance. 10 great trials? Xiao Mao was dumbfounded. Do you think that our immortal alliance can be joined so casually? Qing Liuzi said coldly, I really don't know what to say to you little dolls. City Lord, you don't have to say any more. The envoy said indifferently, this is their own choice. The Alliance Master has given them a chance. Everything depends on them. Xiaohua pondered for a moment, then shook his head slightly and said, Junior, please forgive me, Lord City Lord and Lord Envoy. Junior still has to consider carefully, and when I understand, I'll come and take the 10 tests of the Immortal Alliance. As he spoke, Xiaohua looked at Li Zongbao and the others. He walked a few steps and stopped near the door. I will also consider it. Since Xiaohua moved, how could Fairy Hongxia not move? As she spoke, she also walked to Xiaohua's side. I am also the same. Li Zongbao was a moment late and followed behind Fairy Hongxia. Qing Liuzi's face flashed with a green brilliance. Obviously, he was angry. Haha, City Lord, it seems that you have lost. When the emissary saw this, he rolled his eyes and laughed heartily. I knew it. They definitely wouldn't join the Celestial Alliance so easily. People like them. If they did not go through the real trials and let others see their real strength, they would not give in so easily. Let's go. You have to be prepared for the sure Xuechuan that you lost to me. However, Qing Liuzi squinted his eyes and looked at the envoy in confusion. Through the fog, he could not see the subtle expression on the envoy's face. However, he did not know why the envoy was so protective of Li Zongbao and the others. At this moment, a whistling sound came from afar. A jade slip that looked like a leaf rushed to Qing Liuzi's eyes. Behind the jade slip was an ordinary message talisman. Oh! Even Qing Liuzi was taken aback. His slightly narrowed eyes, which were already filled with anger, opened, and with a grabbing motion, the 2 jade slips landed in his hand. Warning Song Tao command? The envoy asked curiously, City Lord, could it be that something big has happened? Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Qing Liuzi checked the Song Tao command with his divine sense, and the expression on his face immediately melted. It was even faster than snow under the sun. City Lord? The envoy was surprised to see that the news had greatly reduced Qing Liuzi's anger. Sky Patrol City has fallen. Xueyu Immortal has fallen. All the disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect and Mozong Mountain have been captured. Qing Liuzi squinted his eyes and smiled brightly. It was as if the captured and fallen ones were the sword cultivators of Huan country. Ah? How? How? The envoy's shocked tone could be heard clearly by Xiaohua and the others even though it was changed by the fog. Xiaohua's expression also changed greatly. He had a premonition that Sky Patrol City had fallen, but he did not expect that Xueyu Immortal, the City Lord of Sky Patrol City, had fallen. This was the first nascent soul stage cultivator to fall in the Great War of Dao Sword. What he found most inconceivable was that the disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect, why were they in Sky Patrol City? And all the disciples had been captured. -11. Chapter 2981. Xiaohua looked at Qing Liuzi in disbelief, then at Li Zongbao and the rest. The other 3 were also puzzled. Suddenly, Xiaohua had a bad feeling. If not for Juxia's message talisman, Xiaohua immediately connected the capture of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples with his message. Hiss, the messenger who came to his senses, took a deep breath and said in disbelief, the sword cultivator actually killed the Xueyu perfected person. How ruthless. It seems that this matter is out of the Alliance Master's expectations, and he captured 2 disciples at once. This battle. The Taoist sect will definitely lose this battle. Qing Liuzi looked at another message talisman as he spoke. After concluding the battle, he said to Xiao Mao and the rest, Xuanyan School has issued a sect order for all disciples to return to the Golden Goose Ridge as soon as possible. Then, Qing Liuzi flew up and the ecstasy on his face disappeared. He sighed softly and said, Alas, let's not talk about these things. Messenger Zhang, let's go. I haven't lost a bet for many years. Today, I really lost to these little kids. Then, Qing Liuzi turned into a breeze and flew toward the door of the Jingtai Pavilion. The messenger also flew out with Qing Liuzi. Only Xiao Mao, who opened his mouth but didn't know what to say, and the 3 people, who looked a little panicked and confused, were left behind. Damn it. Xiao Hua watched the 2 people disappear. He really didn't know what was going on. Although he couldn't see through the fog and wasn't sure if this messenger was the one he met before the Sword Tomb. Even if this messenger wasn't the one he met before, how could he and the others be so easily let go of by Qing Liuzi? Could it be that Qing Liuzi could earn a lot of spirit stones from the bet in Tongmu City because of the fall of the Sky Patrol City? Big brother. Xiao Mao walked over and said shamefully, Haha, you don't have to say anything. This is everyone's own choice. The most important thing now is to leave quickly. Moreover, the fall of the Sky Patrol City means that the situation in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation has changed. Let's hurry back to our respective sects. Xiao Hua waved his hand and didn't let him say another word. Go outside the door and take a look. Yes, I'll go now. Xiao Mao's face was full of shame and unbearable. He couldn't resist the temptation and agreed, but the messenger of the Human Immortal Alliance didn't care about him. Qing Liuzi still valued Li Zongbao and the others. If he had known this would happen, he would have endured for a while longer. If it wasn't for the shocking news of Sky Patrol City's fall and Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples being captured, he simply wouldn't know how to talk to Xiao Hua and the others. When Xiao Mao pushed open the door to take a look, he turned around and said, Big brother, there are a few servant girls here. Ask them if they can bring us to the teleportation array, Li Zongbao instructed. He said Zhao's words as, they were in sex. They are. Someone will take a look. Zhao's Chan s. He's really letting us go? Fairy Hong Xia found this unbelievable as well. In fact, she was completely bewildered. Who cares? Xiao Hua waved his hand. If you can't figure it out, then don't think about it. It's better to leave Tongmu City as soon as possible. After a while, a few city guards came over. Li Zongbao showed the city lord's order, and the guards were terrified. They flew out of the city lord's sect with the 4 of them and went to the teleportation array. In a palace not far from the Jingtai Pavilion, a cultivator in the middle stage of foundation establishment, dressed in an ordinary Taoist robe, was accompanying Qing Liuzi. In front of them, there was a 1-foot mirror that showed the image of Li Zongbao and the others. Messenger Zhang. Qing Liuzi was still puzzled. These 4 people don't know what's good for them. I personally told them that the Alliance leader loves talents, but they ignored me. Besides, they are just Foundation Establishment disciples. What's the benefit of recruiting them? This emissary was none other than Zhang Zhihao. Haha, City Lord, you must know that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth is changing. A great change is brewing in the Xiaoyu continent. Our Immortal Alliance has to adjust our strategy to conform to the trend of this era and change the conditions for joining the Immortal Alliance. Although the cultivation of these 4 people is low, they have made outstanding contributions in the Taoist sword war and have great appeal. If they can join our Immortal allies, it will definitely improve our reputation, and we will be able to recruit disciples with great potential. Zhang Zhihao said with a smile. Does our Immortal Alliance need to improve our reputation? Qing Liuzi said coldly, as far as I know, many gold core stage cultivators are trying their best to find a chance to join Immortal allies. As long as you open your mouth, I can also find 40 or 400 gold core stage cultivators for you. Not to mention 4. Are 400 gold core cultivators as famous as the first team in the conference hall? Are 400 gold core cultivators as terrifying as the terrifying phoenix? Are 400 gold core cultivators as mysterious as John Doe? Zhang Zhihao asked lightly. Qing Liuzi shook his head. Although Xiao Hua is mysterious, but I have just tested him. He is only in the middle stage of foundation establishment. He is definitely not a gold core cultivator. How can he be John Doe? Of course, this is just a rough guess. Zhang Zhihao shrugged and said with a smile, if the city lord can't see it, then I can't see it either. This is just a speculation of the Alliance Master. It is also because of the Alliance Master's love for talent. It was definitely 100 times better than Xiao Hua's situation in the Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. If Qing Liuzi said this after knowing that the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect had fallen into the Sky Patrol City, I would naturally agree. But But at that time, I did not know that the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect were in the Sky Patrol City. Now, it is too late for me to regret it. Io, hearing Xiao Hua's words, Fairy Hongxia was also enlightened. She almost covered her mouth with her hand and said in surprise, Xiao Lang's messaging charm. That's right. Li Zongbao said lightly. I am afraid that what junior sister Hongxia said is true. The disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect staying in the Sky Patrol City may be closely related to junior brother Zhao's messaging charm. Big brother. Xiao Mao, who was next to him, said anxiously, Actually, the messenger of the alliance leader also said that just now, if we regret it, we can go back at any time. Xiao Hua said with a smile, if we regret it just now and go back now, how embarrassing would it be for you? If they sincerely invite us, it will be normal in a few years. Now that the swordsmanship war, the situation is unknown, it is not good to make early plans. -11. Chapter 2982. But isn't it because of this confusing situation that the Immortal Alliance came to us? Xiao Mao was unconvinced. Li Zongbao looked at Xiao Mao and said, I'm afraid the defeat of the Dao sect is a foregone conclusion. Although I don't know how the sword cultivators can defend Sky Patrol City. But the sword cultivators killed the Sky Patrol City governor. They must have a way to defend Sky Patrol City. It's a good thing for us to join the Immortal Alliance, but our cultivation is weak. We can only be juniors in the Immortal Alliance. Rather than that, we might as well stay in our own sects and join the Immortal Alliance when we have some achievements. Passing the 10 tests of the Immortal Alliance is very important for cultivators. Only then can we be recognized by the other cultivators in the Immortal Alliance. You don't want to be looked down upon by others when you join the Immortal Alliance, do you? Hee, junior brother Xiao, Fairy Hongxia laughed and said, The Immortal Alliance is where the nascent soul grandmasters gather. If we go, we can only carry their shoes. What's the point of going? Yes, I understand. Xiao Mao knew he could not win against them, so he nodded. How far is it from here to the next teleportation portal? Xiao Hua asked Fairy Hongxia as they flew. We still have 5 days. Fairy Hongxia looked into the distance and thought for a while before replying. Fairy Hongxia frowned and said, However, that teleportation portal doesn't lead to Xuanyan sect. From what I know, the teleportation portal to Xuanyan sect should be somewhere else. Does junior brother Xiao know? Of course I know. Xiao Mao nodded. I'll follow big brother and senior sister to Luyang. There's also a teleportation portal to Golden Goose Ridge. There's no need. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, Xuanyan sect has already issued a gathering order. As a disciple of Xuanyan sect, you should hurry back to Golden Goose Ridge. Imperial Thunder sect, Huanhua sect, and Utopia sect will also issue a gathering order soon. We don't dare to delay. Once we reach Luyang, we'll have to return to our respective sections. If that's the case, Xiao Mao hesitated and said, then I'll return to Golden Goose Ridge now? To be honest, Xiao Mao liked the feeling of harmony when he followed Xiao Hua and the rest to train in Huan Country and Million Mountains. He was reluctant to leave. Go. Xiao Hua clapped his hand and took out a jade slip before he said, This contains some secret techniques for cultivation and some of Big Brother's comprehensions towards the broken golden arrow. I was too busy earlier and didn't have the time to give it to you. Now, I'll give it to you. All right. Xiao Mao and Xiao Hua weren't polite at all. They reached out to catch it and nodded. Little brother will return to the Gold Goose Mountain Range. After the battle, little brother will go to the Imperial Thunder sect to pay a visit to big brother. With eldest senior brother Li's token, it will be easy for us to meet. Xiao Hua said with a smile, but eldest senior brother Li is still far away. With the teleportation formation, it's not that far. Li Zongbao also gave Xiao Mao a rare look and exhorted, Junior brother Zhao's cultivation level is the lowest, so you still have to cultivate more. Although the power of the bloodline is good, it is still far inferior to our Dao sect's cultivation path. Yes, I understand. Xiao Mao bit his lips. His eyes were a little moist. He bowed and said, I hope that senior brother Li's wishes will come true. I'm leaving now. And let's go. Not to mention Xiao Hua, who had the deepest feelings for Xiao Mao, even Fairy Hongxia was a little reluctant to part with him. However, everyone waved their hands. They knew that it was only a matter of time before they parted ways with Xiao Mao. After Xiao Mao flew away, Xiao Hua didn't say much. He lowered his head and flew straight ahead with Fairy Hong Xia and Li Zongbao. After flying for half a day, Fairy Hong Xia couldn't help but send a voice transmission. Xiao Hua, do you think Xiao Mao will return to Tongmu City to look for the Immortal Alliance's envoy? Xiao Hua had something on his mind and didn't pay attention to how Fairy Hong Xia addressed him. When he raised his head and saw Fairy Hong Xia's curious expression, he shook his head and said, "So what if he goes? So what if he doesn't go?" "I just want to ask." Fairy Hong Xia said, "I feel that he is very interested in joining the Immortal Alliance." Of course, everyone knows this. Xiao Hua said indifferently, "In Jingtai Pavilion, he already promised Qing Liuzi. You female cultivators are just curious." Xiao Mao is also a cultivator in the middle stage of foundation establishment. Whether he joins the Immortal Alliance or not is his own business. Although we can care about him, we can't control him. Me? Female cultivators? Fairy Hong Xia's mouth curled up as if she was mocking him. How many good junior sisters do you actually have? Sigh. Xiao Hua heard this and couldn't help but feel irritated. However, looking at Fairy Hong Xia's expression, he suppressed the unhappiness in his heart and explained, "My wife, that Huang Mengxiang was indeed only at Tianmin Mountain. After that, he only helped them to repair the array. You know, the Huang family is really pitiful." "Oh, he actually helped them to repair the array? Was he together with Huang Mengxiang?" Fairy Hong Xia frowned and asked again. "This is bad." Xiao Hua complained bitterly in his heart. Previously, when he was talking to Fairy Hong Xia, he did not mention anything about repairing the array. But now, he had no choice but to answer honestly, "Yes, but that was the Huang family's own array jade slip, and they even took the jade essence and the simple method of making jade talismans as a reward." That's when your husband learned how to make jade talismans. Hee hee, they actually gave him the array jade slip and the method of making jade talismans? Fairy Hong Xia's eyes were filled with mockery. The Huang family of Tianmin Mountain treats you as one of their own, right? Not really, it's just a transaction. Xiao Hua explained. You really have nothing to do with this Huang Mengxiang? Fairy Hong Xia asked. Xiao Hua was helpless. Xue Xue was also at Tianmin Mountain that day. We were training together. What can I have to do with Huang Mengxiang? Oh, so there's a younger sister Xue Xue. Fairy Hong Xia sneered. This time, there's no younger sister Xue Xue in Million Mountain. There's only I. Perhaps when you explain Ziming and Juxia to younger sister Xue Xue, you'll also explain it this way, right? Xiao Hua was speechless. He really didn't expect female cultivators to be so troublesome and picky. He clearly had nothing to do with Ziming and Huang Mengxiang. But in Fairy Hong Xia's eyes, it became a problem. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua opened his mouth and wanted to refute. But when the words reached his mouth, he really didn't know how to refute. It seemed that he had some inexplicable entanglements with these female cultivators. Although he didn't have such intimate contact with Fairy Hong Xia, their relationship was far beyond that of ordinary female cultivators, and even beyond the boundary of ordinary fellow Taoists. Especially Juxia. Her incomparable appearance didn't fade because of time, and even became clearer. What made Xiao Hua a little scared was that he actually missed Juxia a little. Sigh. If you're serious with female cultivators, then you'll really be the first to fail. Xiao Hua sighed. He looked at Li Zongbao, who was silently flying forward with his head lowered. He thought of a sentence that cultivators often said, and he muttered in his heart. He secretly envied Li Zongbao because he didn't have Kai Zhuoxia's nagging and nitpicking. Io, how can I think like that? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was immediately alarmed. Li Zongbao has wasted his youth because of Kai Zhuoxia's life and death. I'm guarding a living wife. What else am I thinking? No, I have to quickly divert my wife's attention. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua raised his head and looked in a different direction from where the three of them were flying. He said curiously, Io, this is, without waiting for Fairy Hong Xia to say anything. He hurriedly said to Li Zongbao, Senior Brother Li, bring Fairy Hong Xia to the teleportation array first. What's wrong? Fairy Hong Xia seemed to have seen through Xiao Hua's trick and said sarcastically, Could it be that there's another good junior sister like you? Good junior sister? Li Zongbao naturally didn't hear their voice transmission and asked curiously. At the same time, his divine sense swept towards the direction Xiao Hua was looking at. There's a fight over there. That fellow Taoist seems to be very familiar with it. Xiao Hua hurriedly flew into the air and left his voice to Li Zongbao. The situation is critical. I have to go. Xiao Hua, come back. Fairy Hong Xia shouted angrily. I'll go with you too. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's figure had already turned into the wind and flew away quickly. Fairy Hong Xia's divine sense locked onto Xiao Hua, but in just a moment, Xiao Hua's figure disappeared. She couldn't find any trace of him. Fairy Hong Xia then fiercely looked in that direction and released her divine sense to the limit. Unfortunately, it was as she thought. She didn't see anything. Humph! Fairy Hong Xia stomped her feet in the air, fuming. Li Zongbao released his divine sense for a few miles. Seeing this, he understood that even if he expanded his divine sense by 10 times, he still wouldn't be able to find the fight that Xiao Hua was talking about. Hence, he tactfully retracted his divine sense and looked at Fairy Hong Xia. He said in a deep voice, Junior sister, Xiao Hua is a good person. He has a good heart and a high cultivation. Don't force him too close. You female cultivators don't understand the heart of a male cultivator. A male cultivator doesn't need to have 3 wives and 4 concubines, but a little flirtatious relationship. Not everyone can reject it. I remember Ming once said in the Back Earth Stronghold that if a needle is pointed at an awl, there will always be someone who gets hurt. If you take a step back, you'll be able to see the world. I'm worried that Xiao Hua won't be able to find the teleportation array's location. Fairy Hong Xia's face turned red as she stomped her feet. She knew that Li Zongbao was a man of few words. If it wasn't for the conflict between him and Xiao Hua, he definitely wouldn't have said so much. But after a while, Fairy Hong Xia asked curiously, Senior brother, then what about you? Do you also have so many good junior sisters? Li Zongbao smiled bitterly. The white hair on his head fluttered in the wind. I can have many good junior sisters, but there's only one true love in my heart. As expected, a 3-legged toad is easy to find, but a male cultivator without a good junior sister is hard to find. Fairy Hong Xia pouted and looked in the direction that Xiao Hua flew in with disdain. She shook her head slightly. -11. Chapter 2983. Li Zongbao and Fairy Hong Xia flew towards the transmission array. Behind them, Xiao Mao, who had been flying for a long time with his head lowered, finally stopped in midair. He seemed to have made a decision. Looking in the direction of Li Zongbao and the others, he clenched his teeth and turned to fly away. As for Xiao Hua, in order to get rid of Fairy Hong Xia's divine sense, he actually used the Devil Sect's concealment technique to fly 100 miles away. Only then did he reveal himself in midair. He rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. Damn it, what the hell is this? Xiao Hua muttered to himself. The dual cultivation ceremony hasn't even been held yet, and you're already watching me so closely. If we really dual cultivate in the future, wouldn't you be nagging me every day? Thinking of a fly? This Xiao wants to be with you all the time, accompanying you as you wander about the Dawn Rain continent. But this Xiao doesn't want this kind of suspicious life. I haven't even said a word to the female cultivator, and you can already imagine the consequences of this sentence, as well as the possible situation between me and this female cultivator. This kind of extraordinary imagination really makes me convinced. It's fine if you think about it, but you can't blame this Xiao for something that hasn't happened yet. I'm so outstanding. If I don't have a few good junior sisters, if I don't have a few female cultivators, can I still be considered a male cultivator? Xiao Hua was somewhat disdainful. Qian Diheng once said that the dual cultivation ceremony is the tomb of sweet feelings. It seems like he was right. Damn it, luckily I didn't mention Sun Shu's matter, otherwise I don't know how my wife would slander me. Thinking about this, Xiao Hua looked left and right at this unfamiliar place. He released his divine sense and easily found Li Zongbao and Fairy Hong Xia's figures. He also activated his flying technique and slowly followed beside them. His mind entered the space again. Everything in the space was normal. His primordial spirit was improving rapidly and could now refine low-level pills. As for Little Black, who Xiao Hua was concerned about, it was still lying on the ground, sleeping like Little Yellow. Xiao Hua had already looked at Little Black several times. Sometimes he almost suspected that this was done by the Hutu village's Elder Wu on purpose. Did he not want him to know the secret of the Hutu village? What a gluttonous and sleepy couple. Xiao Hua looked at Little Yellow and Little Black, and he couldn't help but feel a kind of affection in his heart, as if he had already felt it before. Looking at Zhang Luer again, she was still the same. Her eyes were still slowly moving, but she had not woken up. It's not appropriate to place the three-legged golden crow's soul here. Xiao Hua inadvertently saw the soul essence of the three-legged golden crow. When Little Yellow and Little Black wake up, they might just swallow it in one bite. But where should I put it? Xiao Hua had no idea what to do. What is the use of the three-legged golden crow's soul essence? Xiao Hua hadn't thought about this problem for a long time. Now, he was taking advantage of his rare leisure time to think about it. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua couldn't think of anything even after thinking for half a day. It seemed that he wasn't particularly proficient in crafting soul armaments. Forget it, let's talk about it later. Xiao Hua sighed as he recalled the pressure he felt when facing Qing Liuzi, a middle-stage nascent soul cultivator. If he hadn't been practicing the soul technique given to him by the Hutu Stockade's Elder Wu, he would have been forced to reveal his gold core stage cultivation. Facing a middle-stage nascent soul stage expert, there aren't many methods that I can use. Spiritual fire is one, and so is the soul execution light. I just don't know. How can I refine the soul execution light again? Xiao Hua casually flew as he thought, last time. When I used the soul execution light, it was blocked by the 5-star planet disk. I couldn't use it if... Thinking up to here, Xiao Hua suddenly slapped his forehead and said with a big laugh, "This young master is somewhat conforming to the rules. The soul execution light can be refined according to the method given by second senior brother, and it can be completed step by step. But right now, I don't have any suitable materials in my hands. Why can't I refine a heaven-leveling staff like how other soul cultivators refine the heaven-raising staff?" Ha ha ha. That day, when the three-legged golden crow's soul essence appeared, it immediately froze my primordial spirit. Why can't I refine the three-legged golden crow's soul essence into the soul execution light? Since it's an object of 10,000 spirits, it naturally has a primordial spirit. The three-legged golden crow's soul essence can capture primordial spirits and imprison primordial spirits. Wouldn't it combine with the killing intent of the soul execution light? Now that he had an idea, Xiao Hua couldn't help but be eager to give it a try. Not only was he thinking about how to refine the executioner's primal light, but he also took out the bone and jade slip to study how to refine the executioner's primal light in hopes of finding a way to refine it. Unknowingly, half a day had passed. Just as Xiao Hua was slowly flying over, his Buddhist sense swept out from time to time, paying attention to the distance between him and Fairy Hong Xia and the others. Just as Xiao Hua was flying over a barren forest, he suddenly came to a halt and looked in a direction to his right with great astonishment. Damn it! When did I have the ability to make prophecies come true? Just now, I was just trying to trick my wife. Who knew that there would really be people fighting here? Good heavens, and one of them is a golden core. Xiao Hua looked in the direction of Fairy Hong Xia and the others, then swept out with his Buddhist sense again. He was a little hesitant, but just as he was hesitating, Xiao Hua's face changed and he coldly said, "Humph, this cultivator in the mystic cloak is too sinister. He actually set up a formation here. Io, that's not right. This mystic cloak cultivator should be a golden core middle stage cultivator. He hid his cultivation level because he wanted to kill this golden core early-stage female cultivator without leaving any traces. This kind of bullying of the weak by the strong. There must be something fishy about it. How can I not care?" After saying that, Xiao Hua's figure turned into a gust of wind again and flew quickly. In the direction that Xiao Hua was flying, about 100 kilometers away, there was a female cultivator wearing a pure white robe. Her body was flickering with a faint brilliance. She was curled up on a rock. On her wrinkled face, there was a centipede-like scar that ran from the left side of her face to the right side. It looked very terrifying. At this time, the face of this old golden core early-stage female cultivator was abnormally pale. There was a pool of blood on her chest that dyed her Taoist robe red. There was also a large bloodstain below her waist. Although the bleeding had stopped, the blood still slowly dripped onto the gray ground. The female cultivator's eyes were filled with hatred. She stared straight at the cultivator holding a light green box in his hand and said angrily, "Bitch, is it you? I didn't think. You would actually use his jade slip to deceive me. You really want to take my life? Hee hee, now that things have come to this, can't you see? Didn't I want your life?" The voice of the Meow cultivator was distorted. It was impossible to tell whether it was a man or a woman. "Bitch, since you have already decided to kill me, why don't you dare to show your true face to me?" The female cultivator said angrily. "Or do you not dare to face me? Do you not dare to face the kindness of my Sun family?" "Sun Qian," the voice said coldly, "everything in the past is already in the past. I have already repaid the kindness of your Sun family. I don't want to face you now because I don't want you to be sad before you die. When did you repay my Sun family's kindness to you? Can you repay it?" Sun Qian was lying on the ground. Her injuries were so serious that she could hardly get up. However, she still roared like a lioness. For that magic treasure, Lu Mingxing of the Dragon Gate Mountain killed 460 members of your Sun family. Who took revenge for this? Didn't I ask the city lord of Tongmu City to kill the late Golden Core stage Lu Mingxing? If not for me, when would your Sun family be able to take revenge? The Meow cultivator said flatly. "Is this what you mean by repaying the kindness of my Sun family?" Sun Qian was angry again. "Who saved you from the world of ice and snow? Who raised you since you were young? Is this kindness something you can easily repay? That person originally had feelings for me, but you just had to snatch it from me. Father grounded me for 10 years because of this. Is this something you can easily repay? You found your own backer and immediately broke away from my Sun family. You never returned to my Sun family. Father and mother even often asked me to inquire about you. Is this kind of old debt something you can easily repay? When I came to Tongmu City to inquire about you, in order to prevent that person from taking a fancy to me, you actually ruthlessly disfigured my face, making me too ashamed to see that person again. Is this kind of old debt something you can easily repay? Since you have already given yourself to the city lord of Tongmu City, why are you still thinking about that person in your heart? Today, you actually used that person's jade slip to deceive me. Is this kind of new debt something you can easily repay?" Seeing Sun Qian hysterically shouting, the Meow cultivator quietly listened. When Sun Qian finished speaking, the cultivator pointed his finger at the green box. A ball of emerald green light flew out from the box like the rising sun. Strands of green vines grew from the brilliance and swayed in the air. The cultivator said indifferently, "Sun Qian, there is nothing in this world that cannot be repaid. Whether it is new hatred or old hatred, as long as I drop this magic treasure, all the grievances you have in this life will turn into nothing. What's the use of saying so much?" Seeing the powerful might of the green light, Sun Qian knew that even if she was not injured, she would definitely not be this person's opponent. Not to mention, this person was vicious and merciless. He had already set up a magic array and pretended to fight to the death with her while luring her into an ambush. Little sister E, since things have come to this, big sister will not say anything more. Sun Qian sighed and said, "Big sister just wants to ask you, is he, well?" "He is very well. You don't have to worry about him." The cultivator said indifferently, "Didn't you see that jade slip? If he didn't give it to me that day, how could I have broken through to the gold core realm so easily? Now, you can give up. There is only me in his heart, never you." Even when he knew that I was in a situation, he still gave me the enlightenment of the gold core. It can be seen that he is dead set on me. You have already been defeated by me. -11. Chapter 2984. He has always been noble and his heart is higher than the heavens. How could he be interested in a withered flower like you? Alas, it seems that I was also blind. The scar on my face is not undeserved at all. Although the cultivator heard Sun Qian calling her a withered flower, she was still not angry. She looked at the ball of light in the air and said, "Sister, you should go. Your character is really not suitable for this dawn rain continent. You trust others too easily. You are not Chunyi. Chunyi has never called me sister since she was young." Sun Qian suddenly shouted with a look of unwillingness. "What's the difference between being and not being?" The cultivator pointed her finger, and the green ball of light turned into a stream of light and was about to smash towards Sun Qian. "Hee, it's really lively, ah. I really don't know who this Chunyi is if she is not Chunyi." A slightly excited voice suddenly sounded in the air. Xiaohua didn't even bother to conceal himself as he appeared in the air. "Ah?" The cultivator was very surprised to see Xiaohua appear. Sun Qian looked up and saw Xiaohua's face and hurriedly shouted, "Xiaohua, quickly run. You are not her opponent. Quickly return to Imperial Thunder Sect and tell him what you saw. Let Jin Qing take revenge for me." Who are you? How do you know my name is Xiaohua? You and Martial Uncle Jin Qing are old friends?" Xiaohua was in a hurry and obviously did not hear what Sun Qian said earlier. "Idiot! Why are you asking so much? Quickly run." Sun Qian did not answer a single question and only supported half of her body and angrily cursed, "Go die." The cultivator did not care about Sun Qian anymore. She pointed her finger at the green ball of light. The ball of light turned and rushed towards Xiaohua. Moreover, hundreds of green threads came out of the ball of light. Once these threads came out, they immediately absorbed a large amount of heaven and earth spirit qi and turned into the size of a thumb. From all directions, they moved towards Xiaohua with a sharp whistling sound. "Hee," Xiaohua sneered. He slapped his hand, and several thumb-sized jade pieces flew out. At the same time, his figure retreated like the wind. Rumble, just as the green thread expanded again and was about to pierce through the jade pieces and pierce towards Xiaohua, the jade pieces suddenly transformed into a huge fireball and exploded. The powerful impact and the fierce fire immediately pounced on the green light and green net. "Ah, what kind of fireball charm is this?" The cultivator was shocked, but the fire was very fierce. In just a moment, the green light was completely swallowed up. "I didn't expect you to have some skills. I underestimated you." While speaking, the Miwei cultivator once again made a grabbing motion with his hand. That green box suddenly exploded, and completely green light rushed out like fireflies, covering the sky and covering the earth as it rushed towards Xiaohua. In the blink of an eye, all the green lights expanded, and each green light grew huge tentacles, just like the previous green light. Everything within a radius of 1,000 feet was dyed green. Rumble, sure enough, another wave of fireballs was born. Unfortunately, no matter how many fireballs there were, they could not compare to the green light. All the outer layers of the fireballs were covered by the green light. Very quickly, the fireballs also disappeared. "I want to see how many of these top-quality fireball charms you have." The cultivator sneered, but suddenly found that Xiaohua had disappeared from the green light. "I naturally don't have too many fireball charms, but those are enough." Just as the cultivator released his divine sense to investigate, Xiaohua's figure rushed out from the place where Sun Qian was lying down. "Oh, the 5 elements escape technique? You are actually still in contact with Sun Qian?" The cultivator was slightly surprised. He pointed his finger again, and thousands of green shadows rushed towards Xiaohua. However, this time, the green shadows also covered Sun Qian. "Hee," Xiaohua stretched out his hand, and the sword gourd flew out of the space. He pointed his finger, and with 2 whooshing sounds, 2 green and red spirit execution light flew out of the sword gourd towards the neck of the cultivator who was hiding in the Mi-Wei. Ouch! The golden core cultivator was extremely sensitive to the extraordinariness of the spirit execution light. He hurriedly grabbed with his hand, and the green box suddenly flew into his hand. A cluster of green light rushed out like a fountain and blocked the spirit execution light. Pacha, with a crisp sound, not only was the green light broken by the spirit execution light, but the green box was also shattered by the spirit execution light. "Oh no!" The Miwei cultivator was greatly alarmed. He hurriedly moved his body, and a string of afterimages flashed in midair. Unfortunately, no matter how the cultivator escaped, the spirit execution light still went straight for his neck, and now it was only a few feet. Rise, the cultivator hurriedly slapped his forehead again, and a green light was spat out from his mouth. At the same time, a pressure close to that of a golden core late stage soared into the sky and rolled towards Xiao Hua. That oppressive might far surpass the misty green brilliance, and instantly enveloped Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua sneered, and also slapped his head. The pressure close to that of a nascent soul early stage swept out like a waterfall, and immediately blocked the pressure of the Mi-Wei cultivator. An indescribable impact force rushed out from the point of contact between the two pressures, and suddenly a powerful hurricane was formed. You are really nameless? The Mi-Wei cultivator almost turned pale with fright, and cried out involuntarily. Oh, who are you? Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows, and understood that he must be familiar with this Mi-Wei cultivator. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's pressure was only formed by the sun-shrouding art. It was already good that he could resist the pressure of a golden core late-stage cultivator. If he wanted to attack, he couldn't counter this Mi-Wei cultivator. Therefore, he could only watch as the green light rushed out of the sky and turned into an oval mirror. The pillar-like green light shot out from the mirror and directly rushed towards the spirit execution light. Clear sky mirror? Seeing the mirror fly out of the Mi-Wei cultivator's confusion, and the green light immediately stopped the spirit execution light, Xiao Hua couldn't help but cry out in alarm. The mysterious Mi-Wei cultivator also felt relieved when he saw that the clear sky mirror could stop the spirit execution light. He glanced at Sun Xian, who was also shocked, and sensed Xiao Hua's nascent soul stage pressure. After a little calculation, his body moved quickly, and he was about to fly away. You think you can escape with the clear sky mirror? Xiao Hua was shocked, and he opened his mouth. Buzz! A huge roar sounded, and the seal of turning the sea, which he hadn't used for a long time, rushed out. Wu, at this time, the seal of turning the sea was more freely in Xiao Hua's hand, and in a moment, it became several tens of feet large, and like a small mountain, it smashed towards the Mi-Wei cultivator. The seal of turning the sea, whether it was the power or the weight, was really huge. The Mi-Wei cultivator's fleeing figure was already under the control of the seal of turning the sea, and the huge force pressed down on the cultivator, causing his body to distort. Go! The cultivator had no choice but to point his finger, and a huge pillar of green light rushed out from the clear sky mirror, directly blocking the seal of turning the sea. Buzz! Buzz! The seal of turning the sea made a noise, and the light pillar was greatly suppressed, causing the entire clear sky mirror to shake slightly. Puff! A mouthful of blood essence was spat out from the cultivator's mouth, and it landed on the clear sky mirror. Woo! The clear sky mirror let out a sorrowful cry, and its brilliance increased greatly, instantly covering the seal of turning the sea. Buzz! Buzz! The seal of turning the sea shook violently, and it actually started to shrink, as if it was going to fall into the clear sky mirror. Damn it, Xiao Hua muttered, and his eyes turned. At this time, the Mi-Wei cultivator screamed, and his hands involuntarily covered his head. It was Xiao Hua's soul thorn technique. Taking advantage of this moment, the seal of turning the sea expanded again, and it pressed down on the clear sky mirror by a few feet. Roar! The Mi-Wei cultivator roared, and he forcefully endured the severe pain in his divine sense. He really wanted to spit out his essence again, but at this time, the green and red spirit slaying vital light flashed at him at the same time, and it landed on his neck. The cultivator was immediately scared out of his wits, and he hurriedly activated the protective golden light around his body, trying to pull himself up and make a last-ditch struggle. Unfortunately, just as the golden light flashed, it was immediately cut apart by the spirit slaying vital light like silk. Puff! The Mi-Wei cultivator was torn apart, and his head flew out, and blood spurted high into the sky. Chen Yuming, seeing the head in the air, Xiao Hua couldn't help but be shocked. This Mi-Wei cultivator, This middle gold core cultivator who was chasing after Sun Qian was actually Chen Yuming, the deacon of Twilight Tong City's conference hall. Damn it, I've completely offended that bastard Qing Liuzi. Xiao Hua looked at the mess on the ground and smiled bitterly. He had been thinking for a long time, but he couldn't imagine that this person was actually Qing Liuzi's confidant. But soon after, Xiao Hua also sneered. The number of nascent soul cultivators I've offended seems to be increasing. This one won't make a difference. Besides, who would know that I killed Chen Yuming? Thinking, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and a wisp of Samadhi true fire appeared, and in a moment, Chen Yuming's corpse was burned into nothingness. Xiao Hua waved his hand, and Chen Yuming's storage pouch, the formation disc and other items that were used to set up the formation, the fragments of the green box, and the clear sky mirror all fell into his hands. Xiao Hua didn't even look at them before putting them into the space, and then his gaze fell on Sun Qian. When Sun Qian saw that Xiao Hua actually killed Chen Yuming so quickly and inconceivably, she was already shocked to death. But when Xiao Hua destroyed the corpse, she patted her hand and took out a jade bottle from her storage pouch, poured out 2 scarlet spirit pills, and slowly swallowed them. In a moment, a trace of red appeared on Sun Qian's face. "Senior, are you Sun Qian?" Xiao Hua looked at this female cultivator and said somewhat cautiously, "Senior, are you acquainted with Chunyi and my thunder-controlling sect's martial uncle Jinxing? Also, the Flower Burial Manor's beauty-retaining grass was done by you?" Xiao Hua had long heard Chen Yi mention Sun Qian in the Flower Burial Manor. He thought that Sun Qian was a young and beautiful cultivator like Chan Yi, but he didn't expect that she was actually an old woman with a scar on her face. But when Sun Qian mentioned Jinxing, Xiao Hua had no choice but to treat her with respect. As for why he didn't ask who the Miwei cultivator was and wanted to kill him, naturally it was the same. -11. Chapter 2985. Sun Qian was even more surprised to see Xiao Hua being so respectful and calling her senior. After all, Xiao Hua's cultivation was much higher than hers. Of course, she quickly understood in her heart that the root cause of this was Jinqing. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, you don't have to be so polite. Just call me fellow Taoist." Sun Qian struggled to get up. "Although Jinqing and I are old friends, it's all in the past. There's no need to mention it." Then, Sun Qian looked around and said, "The grudge between Chunyi and I is also from a long time ago. Fellow Taoist, you don't need to know about it. As for what happened in Burial Flower Manor, it was naturally my doing. I wished I could pull out her tendons and skin her alive. Destroying a few youth-retaining herbs is nothing. That day when you entered Burial Flower Manor, I was waiting for an opportunity and went in with you. Therefore, I knew you were Xiao Hua. Well, I thank fellow Taoist Xiao for saving my life. It's a pity that I can't repay you. Moreover, I have other things to do. Goodbye." After saying that, Sun Qian bowed and was about to leave with her flying technique. "Ouch! Senior, don't worry." Seeing Sun Qian leaving in such a hurry, Xiao Hua was anxious and shouted, "If you leave, what will I do?" "Oh, what will you do?" Sun Qian was also surprised. "I'm leaving by myself. What does that have to do with you?" Xiao Hua rubbed his hands and said embarrassedly, "Senior, your injuries don't seem to be so simple. I have some healing pills here. Moreover, with Senior's injuries, if he were to encounter Chan Yi, who has a heart as vicious as a scorpion, if he were to leave by himself, I'm afraid he would only die. Since she was able to send Chen Yuming over, who knows if she has other backup plans? Why don't you follow me and wait until your injuries are healed? You can go to the Imperial Thunder Sect or anywhere else. Won't I be relieved? Won't I be able to answer to Martial Uncle Jinqing?" Jinqing was very good to Xiao Hua. How could Xiao Hua let go of such an opportunity to repay Jinqing? Sun Qian hesitated slightly and nodded. "I can go with you, but don't tell Jinqing about me." Why?" Xiao Hua was surprised. Sun Qian stubbornly raised her head and said indifferently, "If fellow cultivator Xiao doesn't agree, I will leave immediately." "All right." Although Xiao Hua didn't understand the relationship between Jinqing, Chen Yi, and Sun Qian, Xiao Hua understood a lot from Sun Qian's stubbornness, Chen Yi's viciousness, and the indecisiveness in Jinqing's flute. However, when Xiaohua released his Buddhist consciousness again. Where was Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia? Xiaohua couldn't help but ask awkwardly, Senior, do you know where the nearest transmission array is? Sun Qian didn't understand why Xiaohua didn't give her the pills, and instead asked about the teleportation formation. She looked around and casually pointed to 3 places, saying, one of them leads to Twilight Tong City. I don't think fellow Taoist Xiao will walk right into a trap, right? Which of the 2 directions do you want to go, fellow Taoist? Seeing that one of the directions Sun Qian was pointing at was similar to the direction of Fairy Hongxia, Xiaohua happily scratched his ears and cheeks and said, it's there. Then, he grabbed Sun Qian out of thin air and flew towards that direction. Although Sun Qian was injured, she was still a Jin Dan stage cultivator after all. Xiaohua's grab made her look like a child, and Sun Qian didn't seem to have any strength to resist. This caused Sun Qian to be shocked again. However, Sun Qian immediately felt relieved. With the pressure of a nascent soul cultivator and the strength to easily kill a golden core cultivator, if Xiaohua wasn't a nascent soul cultivator, who else could he be? However, while Sun Qian was relieved, she was puzzled again. After all, when Xiaohua rushed into the burial flower manor, Sun Qian was secretly watching from the side. Xiaohua really had the strength of a foundation establishment cultivator. How long had it been? Could it be that Xiaohua had already concealed his cultivation? Sun Qian naturally had this thought. However, the moment this thought appeared, Sun Qian immediately shouted, fellow Taoist Xiao, you're flying towards this direction? Hee. Xiaohua was extremely embarrassed as he replied, thank you, Senior. This Xiao. Oh, I see it, it's here. Xiaohua's flying speed increased. It was exactly where Sun Qian was pointing. Sun Qian naturally released her divine sense. Unfortunately, she couldn't see anything. Oh, by the way, Senior, please help me conceal my cultivation. Before nameless identity is exposed, don't tell others. Xiaohua seemed to be indifferent, but there was an unquestionable meaning in his tone. I understand. Although Sun Qian was stubborn, she still understood this kind of thing and agreed without hesitation. From afar, Xiaohua began to use his divine sense to harass Fairy Hongxia. He seemed to be in the right. Fairy Hongxia seemed to be in a fit of pique and did not release her divine sense. Only when they were close enough did Xiaohua helplessly shout, Senior Brotherly, Junior Sister Hongxia, quickly come over and take out your pills. This senior son is injured. There's really a fight? Fairy Hongxia was also surprised. She released her divine sense and saw that beside Xiaohua was a female cultivator. Her expression changed instantly. Of course, after a moment, she saw Sun Qian's appearance again. Fairy Hongxia's face was slightly hot. She quickly went forward and took out the medicine that Xiaohua gave her. Senior, it's not that I don't want to give you elixirs. It's that I don't have any in my storage bag. Xiaohua only had eyes for others. His excellent character was immediately exposed. Thank you, junior niece. Facing Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao, Sun Qian's tense heart finally relaxed. She nodded with a smile and took the elixirs without hesitation. Then, Sun Qian changed into a Taoist robe with Fairy Hongxia and followed Xiaohua and the rest. Although Xiaohua's elixirs were miraculous, Chen Yuming wanted Sun Qian's life after all. If Sun Qian wanted to recover, it would take a period of time. With Xiaohua and the rest accompanying her, Sun Qian didn't have to worry. Although Fairy Hongxia didn't ask much, Xiaohua couldn't not report. He explained the cause of the matter in detail. Of course, Sun Qian also listened at the side. Xiaohua thought that Sun Qian would definitely say something. She might even reveal the grudge between the 3 of them. Now that Chun Yi's viciousness had been exposed, Jin Qing's choice would naturally be biased towards Sun Qian. If he could accomplish this, he would be repaying Jin Qing, who knew that Sun Qian didn't say a word. No matter how Xiaohua tried to beat around the bush, Fairy Hongxia would agree. Helpless, Xiaohua could only shut his mouth and extinguish this thought. After a few days, Xiaohua's elixirs were effective. Sun Qian's injuries had healed and the teleportation array was in sight. Sun Qian immediately stopped flying and bowed. Fellow cultivator Xiao, thank you for saving my life. Now, I have to go somewhere and can't travel with the 3 of you. Goodbye. Xiaohua wanted to say something but hesitated. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior, please be careful." "That's right. Senior, there are some elixirs. Take them, they will be useful in the future." Fairy Hong Xia was careful. Without waiting for Sun Qian to fly away, she immediately took out a jade bottle and handed it to Sun Qian. Sun Qian didn't want to accept it, but the effect of the elixir was really good. It was indeed very useful to her. Thus, Sun Qian hesitated. "Senior, Martial Uncle Jin Qing has helped me before. This is Junior's filial piety. Please accept it." Xiaohua was afraid that Sun Qian wouldn't accept it. Who knew that once Jin Qing was mentioned, Sun Qian's expression changed. She said indifferently, "I don't have any entanglements with Jin Qing." "Fellow cultivator Xiao, you misunderstood." After saying that, she flew away without looking back, leaving a lonely figure in everyone's eyes. "You talk too much." Fairy Hong Xia glared at Xiaohua and hurriedly flew over. Unfortunately, she was only a foundation establishment cultivator. How could she catch up with Sun Qian? Luckily, everyone was heading towards the teleportation formation. There was no need to worry about any mishaps. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He knew that he had underestimated Sun Qian's stubbornness. He looked at Li Zongbao and didn't say anything. The two of them slowly flew behind. After half a day, they saw a beautiful town. Fairy Hong Xia was standing in the air outside the town. Xiaohua looked at Fairy Hong Xia's unhappy face and knew that the result was not good. He asked softly, "I did catch up with her. I caught up with her when Senior Sun stepped into the teleportation formation." Fairy Hong Xia sighed and said, "It's a pity that Senior Sun didn't even talk to me. It was as if she didn't know me. She didn't even accept the elixir. This old lady is too." Xiaohua smacked his lips and shrugged his shoulders helplessly. That's called unforgettable love." Fairy Hong Xia snorted and said, "Unlike some people who have who knows how many good junior sisters." "Bad girl," Xiaohua complained in his heart. He rolled his eyes and pretended to be mysterious. "I'm afraid that's not all. I didn't dare to tell you guys earlier. I reckon that Senior Sun, that Chen Yi, and Martial Uncle Jin Qing have a story." "Who is Chen Yi?" Fairy Hong Xia immediately became spirited. "What story do the three of them have?" "This Senior Sun. Although she has a scar on her face, she looks elegant. She must have been a beauty when she was young." "Chen Yi." Xiaohua was a little troubled. He didn't know how to explain it. After thinking for a while, he gave a rough explanation. Although Xiaohua's oral ability was not as good as Li Zongbao's, his story was more bizarre. It even involved the story of the youthful grass and Sun Qian and Chen Yi. Fairy Hong Xia was fascinated by it. Li Zongbao also finally knew the origin of Xiaohua's revitalizing elixir. At the same time, he naturally understood how dangerous the four of them had been in Tongmu City. But it was also because of this that Li Zongbao was even more puzzled. If Chen Yi was in Tongmu City, there was no reason for her to let Xiaohua go, even if Xiaohua was the hero of the battle. But if Chen Yi wasn't in Tongmu City, why would Chen Yuming ambush Sun Qian? However, at this time, they were only a short distance away from the Kai family of Luyang. How could Li Zongbao's heart contain anything else? He was just thinking about it in his heart. No matter how dangerous it was all Xiaohua's fault. Li Zongbao was a disciple of the Utopia faction. Even if Qing Liuzi was given a lot of courage, he would never dare to touch Li Zongbao at this time. -11. Chapter 2986. However, Fairy Hong Xia was not Li Zongbao. She still wanted to ask about Chen Yi and Sun Qian, as well as Jin Qing. However, Xiaohua really did not know. He could only smile bitterly and shake his head. Actually, there's no need to ask about the truth of the story. Chen Yi won't mention it, and Sun Qian won't talk about it either. The only one who can talk about it is Martial Uncle Jin Qing. Will he talk about it? It's useless to pursue this now. Look at Chen Yi's viciousness and scheming, as well as Senior Sun's stubbornness. Sigh. Any male cultivator would not have a good ending. If there's a chance, we can ask Martial Uncle Jin Qing's opinion. It's best if we can play matchmaker. Xiaohua's words sounded simple, but this was a dispute between Golden Core cultivators. What could a few Foundation establishment cultivators do? Actually, I think the biggest reason is Senior Sun's face. Fairy Hong Xia said worriedly. No one is willing to show their ugliest part to the person they love the most. Chen Yi is in charge of Burial Flower Manor. She has some elders who know poison. Senior son's face must be related to Chan Yi. Xiao Hua nodded. If we don't heal the scar on his face, it won't be appropriate to give senior son the rejuvenation pill. We'll have to rely on you. Fairy Hongxia glared at Xiao Hua. Didn't you say you can do anything except give birth? Yes, junior sister. I'll do whatever you ask. Xiao Hua sighed. His efforts were not in vain. However, he felt that his words were wrong. He had no reason to ask for a junior sister. Fortunately, Fairy Hongxia rolled her eyes and did not argue with him. The three of them descended from the sky and entered the teleportation array. After exiting Rain Town's teleportation array, they were supposed to fly southwest. Xiao Hua was no longer an Qi refinement disciple. It would only take a few days for him to accompany Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao to Yang Cauldron Mountain. However, the closer they got to Lu Yang, the more anxious Fairy Hongxia became. Even Li Zongbao, who was usually calm and steady, had a slight blush on his face. Let's take the flying boat. Xiao Hua looked at Li Zongbao. The flying boat was in Li Zongbao's storage bag. Take us and fly back. Unexpectedly, Fairy Hongxia said resolutely, although the flowing cloud flying ship is fast, it can't compare to your lightning evasion. All right. Xiao Hua didn't dare to decline, and he said in a low voice, Senior apprentice brotherly, don't use the slightest bit of magic power. Little brother will carry you and fly. Yes. Li Zongbao nodded slightly. Without waiting for him to speak, Xiao Hua reached out with his left hand and grabbed Li Zongbao's wrist out of thin air, while his right hand gently wrapped around Fairy Hongxia's slender waist. With a rumbling sound of thunder, the three of them instantly turned into streaks of lightning and shot up into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. In less than 2 days, he saw a towering mountain in the distant forest. There was a huge cauldron at the top of the mountain. It was the Yang Cauldron Mountain that Xiao Hua had seen when he first came to Luyang. A slightly complicated expression appeared in Xiao Hua's eyes. Yes, it had only been a few decades. The little itinerant cultivator from back then had now become a golden core cultivator. The feeling of uneasiness and the inability to see the future had now been replaced by complacency. Back then, he didn't know what the outcome would be when he entered Luyang. But when he entered, he had a beauty in his arms. However, looking at the Yang Cauldron Mountain, it was still the same. At the foot of the mountain, the river that wasn't considered wide still flowed slowly, like a never-ending melody. What had changed were people, things, experiences, and attitudes. Are the fake mountains and stone sculptures in the small town still the same? Xiao Hua's figure swept across the river, and he couldn't help but think, is that blind old man still well? At that moment, Xiao Hua suddenly turned around. Darling Xiao, Fairy Hongxia said anxiously, the Kai family is on the other side of the river, not in town. I know. Xiao Hua said indifferently, however. I think there's something more important that needs to be done. Oh? Fairy Hongxia was stunned. She really didn't know what was more important than Kai Zhuoxia's life at that moment. When Xiao Hua flew to a corner of the small town, he released Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao and landed in the middle of the pile of stone sculptures. After a few decades, the group of stone sculptures had been damaged. The previously lifelike child had long lost his limbs, and the old cow that had lowered its head to plow the fields was gone. Only a large portion of its body remained, and there was a lot of bird droppings on it. Although Fairy Hongxia was born and grew up in Luyang, she didn't know anything about the stone sculptures. The first time I came to Luyang town, I saw a blind old man here. Xiao Hua calmly recounted the situation that day. He was just a mortal, and he was blind. Yet, he was able to focus on carving for 20 years. He used the unique scenery to decorate Luyang, and used the beautiful scenery to repay the people who helped him. 20 years, almost 30% of his life, he had been doing this seemingly boring thing. He didn't know how great the effects of his carving would be, nor did he know how long his works would last. Yet, he did it. Only when he did it, would his legacy remain in this world, and only then would others be able to see his existence. Now, the stone sculptures are already damaged. Perhaps it won't be long before they are cleaned up. Now, not many people will remember the old man who lowered his head to chisel the stones decades ago. When the stone sculptures are gone, even fewer people will know. But this person, he really did exist. This matter, he really did try his best in the past. The beauty of Liu Yang, it really did exist. The life and death of a person are coincidental, but also inevitable. Even if a mortal only lives for 50 to 60 years, even if a Mahayana cultivator lives for tens of thousands of years, as long as they live, they work hard, they do something, they will leave a deep mark in this world. Humans may not remember, but heaven and earth will remember, and so will the heavenly Tao. Sometimes, life and death aren't scary. What's scary is being mediocre. Xiao Hua looked at the traces left behind by the vicissitudes of time on this stone sculpture and spoke with deep emotions. When Li Zongbao and Fairy Hong Xia heard this, their hearts were moved. For Xiao Hua to be able to cultivate to the nascent soul stage in such a heaven-defying manner, there was indeed something special about him. The two of them were completely convinced. Junior brother's words are extremely true. I am indeed somewhat superficial. Li Zongbao took a deep breath. Zhuoxia's life and death isn't important. What's important is the unforgettable memory of her. Hearing Li Zongbao's words, Xiao Hua was relieved. After all, Li Zongbao had placed too much hope in Kai Zhuoxia's life. He really didn't dare to guarantee that his strange willow branch would be able to keep Kai Zhuoxia alive. If he wasn't facing a living Kai Zhuoxia, but a skeleton, Xiao Hua didn't know if Li Zongbao, who cultivated the parting emotions treasure mirror and whose mind was injured by the immortal slaying whip, could remain calm. Phew, Fairy Hong Xia also let out a long breath and nodded. Darling Xiao, I was too anxious. Let's go now. Xiao Hua glanced at the broken stone sculptures again. With a flick of his sleeves, his body floated up again. A chant similar to Sanskrit came from Xiao Hua's mouth. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. All living things must return to their origin. This stone sculpture has already completed its mission. If it's still here, it will become a tragic scene. Why don't you go too? As Xiao Hua's voice fell, all the stone sculptures slowly stirred up fine dust in the wind. Not long after, they completely disappeared between heaven and earth. The people were gone. The objects were gone too. Their memories would naturally be gone too. Fairy Hong Xia adjusted her mood and didn't even release her divine sense. She brought Xiao Hua and slowly flew to the other side of the river. Just like before, many of the secular people in Luyang town stopped in their tracks and respectfully bowed to the three of them. Some of the elders who knew Fairy Hong Xia even knelt on the ground. One could see the prestige of the Kai family in Luyang. In just a moment, they had crossed the river. Xiao Hua looked at the continuous manor in the distance, and the majestic archway and vermilion door. It was obviously more imposing than before. He couldn't help but smile. The Kai family of Luyang is no longer what it used to be. Fairy Hong Xia's face also revealed a faint smile. She said cheerfully, Darling Xiao, you must be joking. I haven't been back for a long time. Darling Xiao has contributed greatly to the Kai family's current development. Immediately after, Fairy Hong Xia tidied her Taoist robe and said politely, Senior brother, this way please. All right. Li Zongbao nodded. He knew that Fairy Hong Xia was performing the etiquette of a host. I remember that the doors of your Kai family have always been tightly shut. It seems that only the doors of nobility and the doors of life and death can open. Why are they open today? Just as Fairy Hong Xia was being polite to Li Zongbao, Xiao Hua's sharp eyes saw the vermilion door slowly opening. Don't listen to that Kai Mingsong's nonsense. Fairy Hong Xia pursed her lips and said, Our Kai family of Luyang is just a cultivation family. Why do we have so many rules? When I left Luyang to join the Huanhua sect, I had already asked my father to abolish this rule. The Kai family of Qingyang really can't control our Kai family of Luyang. Immediately after, Fairy Hong Xia looked at the people who were walking out of the door. She smiled and said, Perhaps there are some important guests who are here today? It doesn't matter who comes, as long as it's not a matter of life and death. Xiao Hua smiled. Don't jinx it. Fairy Hong Xia glared at him. Don't blame me for not letting you enter the manor if you continue. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. Xiao Hua shrunk his neck and stole a glance at Li Zongbao. It was a pity that Xiao Hua's advice was wasted. Li Zongbao was in the middle of the situation. Although he knew that he shouldn't be so worried and that he would get the results in a moment, his eyes were still looking into the distance, somewhat absent-minded. Forget it. Humans aren't saints. If all the male cultivators in the world were as infatuated as Li Zongbao, the female cultivators wouldn't be sad. Xiao Hua sighed and didn't say anything more. Since Xiao Hua and the rest had already seen the Kai family's door open, the people walking out of the door naturally saw the three people in midair. A few not-so-strong foundation establishment divine senses swept over. -11. Chapter 2987. Naturally, those divine thoughts only scanned Xiao Hua and Li Zongbao for a moment before landing on Fairy Hongxia. In a moment, 3 to 5 cultivators hurriedly flew out from the gate and rushed towards the three of them. Xiao Hua could see clearly that the person in front of him was Kai Haisong. Although they hadn't seen each other for decades, Kai Haisong's hair had turned white and he was covered in wrinkles. However, his tall, thin figure, square face, and bright eyes were exactly the same as when Xiao Hua first met him. In fact, his tightly shut lips were even more majestic than before. However, at this moment, Kai Haisong's tightly shut lips were trembling. His bright eyes were flashing with surprise and love. The several people near him were also in the early stage of the foundation building realm. Although they were also old, Xiao Hua could still recognize them. They were none other than Kai Haisong's several clan brothers, Kai Shansong, Kai Fengsong, and Kai Husong. When Fairy Hongxia saw that her father was coming, she was overjoyed. She ignored Xiao Hua and hurriedly flew down. Unfortunately, before Fairy Hongxia could call out father, Kai Haisong suddenly stood in midair. Kai Shansong and the rest also stood respectfully. The four of them bowed together and said, Master of the Kai family of Luyang, Kai Haisong, and his clan relatives, Kai Shansong, Kai Fengsong, and Kai Husong, greet Fairy Hongxia of the Huanhua sect. Fairy Hongxia was stunned. Then, her face showed bitterness. She hurriedly stopped. This was the etiquette of the Huanhua sect. It was the face of the Huanhua sect. She didn't dare to avoid it and accepted the bow firmly. Then, she returned the bow and said, Master of the Kai family, please rise. Then, Fairy Hongxia pointed at Li Zongbao and Xiao Hua who were flying over and said calmly, This is Li Zongbao of the Utopia sect and Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder sect. Yes, Master of the Kai family of Luyang, Kai Haisong, and his clan relatives, Kai Shansong, Kai Fengsong, and Kai Husong. Greet Senior Brother Li Zongbao of the Utopia sect and Senior Brother Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder sect. Kai Haisong and the rest did not dare to tarry as they hurriedly bowed again. Furthermore, unlike the way they treated Fairy Hongxia, they even added the words, Senior Brother. As a disciple of the Huanhua sect, Fairy Hongxia was naturally afraid that there would be a difference in etiquette when she returned to the Kai family sect in Luyang. However, Li Zongbao and Xiao Hua were a little different. When the two of them heard Kai Haisong address him as Senior Brother, their faces were already filled with fear. They looked at each other and hurriedly extended their hands, saying anxiously, Senior Kai, please don't stand on ceremony. As they spoke, the two of them were about to activate their Fali. However, as soon as they released their Fali, they immediately felt that it was inappropriate and simultaneously withdrew their Fali. However, the two of them immediately returned the greeting, not daring to accept it like Fairy Hongxia. Senior Kai. Kai Haisong and the others were bewildered. They looked at Li Zongbao, then at Xiao Hua, and finally at Fairy Hongxia. At this moment, Xiao Hua looked like he was in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. However, he had previously visited the Kai family sect in Luyang when he was around Qi refining stage level 4. He could be considered an old acquaintance of the Kai family. It was barely acceptable for him to call him senior. However, Li Zongbao was now in the late stage of the foundation establishment stage. Furthermore, Li Zongbao's name was like the sun in the sky in the 3 cultivation countries. Everyone knew that he was the strongest person below the golden core stage. How could he call him senior? However, When Kai Haisong saw the slight blush on Fairy Hongxia's face, he could not help but laugh. He looked left and right at the few disciples of the sect. His eyes were filled with realization. Head of the Kai family, let us descend and speak. Fairy Hongxia was naturally a little shy. However, she still spoke in a proper manner. Yes, please. A smile appeared on Kai Haisong's wrinkled face as he respectfully stepped aside. Fairy Hongxia's face was also formal as she raised her hand and said, Senior Brother Li, Junior Brother Xiao, please? All right. Xiao Hua was clearly impatient with this kind of etiquette. He glanced at Li Zongbao and descended from the sky. Li Zongbao did not mind and also landed on the ground. On the other hand, Kai Haisong and the rest were a little surprised. Fairy Hongxia could be considered as half a host. Naturally, she would invite Li Zongbao and Xiao Hua to go first. However, Li Zongbao's cultivation level was higher than Xiao Hua's, so Li Zongbao should be the one to land first. Furthermore, Li Zongbao was the leader of the first group in the conference hall. If he did not go first, who would? However, Kai Haisong immediately understood. When Xiao Hua came to the Kai family sect decades ago, he was originally a rogue cultivator. He probably did not know about this kind of etiquette. Looking at Li Zongbao's magnanimous appearance, Kai Haisong's eyes almost narrowed. When the group of people landed, the Kai family disciples standing by the vermilion door bowed and greeted them respectfully. However, there were two early Foundation establishment disciples in front of the group. They looked to be middle-aged, but their facial features were very similar to Kai Haisong and the rest. Xiao Hua looked at the disciples in front of him, who were around the 10th level of qi refining, and sighed in his heart. A few decades ago, when he first came to the Kai family sect, most of the disciples he received were at the 3rd or 4th level of qi refining. In just a few decades, the Kai family's cultivation level had increased by more than a level. In fact, other than the family head and the rest who had already built their foundation, even the second-generation disciples had built their foundation. Jun, Hong Sheng, the two of you have cultivated well. Fairy Hongxia looked at the two disciples who were much older than her and said with a smile, Many thanks for elder sister's praise. The two disciples respectfully replied, Our Kai family is proud of elder sister. We follow elder sister's example and cultivate diligently. Our cultivation level is nothing in front of elder sister. It has been hard on you. Fairy Hongxia felt a little bitter in her heart. She knew that the two of them were able to cultivate to the foundation establishment stage in the Kai family sect. If they were in a cultivation sect, their future would be bright. However, the two of them stayed in Luoyang for the sake of the Kai family sect's future. These two would definitely be the candidates for the position of family head in the future. Elder sister and the rest have worked harder than us. The two of them smiled and said, Our Kai family sect still needs the support of elder sister and the rest. Elder sister understands? Fairy Hongxia nodded. Then, Fairy Hongxia waved her hand and said, You all can rise. The matter between the Huan Hua sect and the Kai family sect is over. Now, it's time to pay respects. Hongxia, you can't. Kai Haisong hurriedly stopped her. Did you get the Huan Hua sect's permission to return to the Kai family sect? You have to show us the Huan Hua sect's token first. At this point, Fairy Hongxia couldn't care less. Looking at Kai Haisong's bitter face for the sake of the Kai family sect's prosperity, she knelt on the ground and said sadly, Father, this boy is unfilial. He hasn't returned for so many years. You've worked hard. Hongxia, Kai Haisong couldn't help but feel sad. Tears flowed down his face as he went forward to support his daughter. Seeing that Fairy Hongxia was also crying, he used his rough hand to wipe away the tears on her delicate face and said, Hurry and get up. You're already so old. You'll be a joke to outsiders. It's all right, father. We're not outsiders. Fairy Hongxia whispered shyly. Father knows. Kai Haisong looked at Li Zongbao with great satisfaction and said, You're not young anymore. Furthermore, you're not a disciple of our Kai family sect. These matters aren't something that father can handle. Everything depends on your sect. However, father is very satisfied. After the great battle of Dao Sword, father has been inquiring about the battle. Yuan, fellow Taoist Li and fellow Taoist Zhao's deeds. We've heard it word by word. We've heard it more than once. You've really given the Kai family sect face. Kai Haisong then turned to Li Zongbao and said, fellow Taoist Li, in the future, Father, Fairy Hong Xia's face turned red as she said shyly, it's not senior brother Li, ah? Kai Haisong and the others were stunned and immediately felt slightly disappointed in their hearts. However, after a moment, Kai Haisong smiled again and looked at Xiao Hua and said, fellow Taoist Xiao, I'll leave the future matters to you. How could Xiao Hua not see Kai Haisong's disappointment? However, if he asked himself honestly, Xiao Hua's current performance was indeed far inferior to Li Zongbao, whether it was in terms of cultivation or so-called family power. However, Xiao Hua could see the sincerity in Kai Haisong's smile. It came from the bottom of his heart. Although Kai Haisong's last words weren't many, they were heavy. They were the expectations of a loving father for his daughter's future happiness. This junior will. Xiao Hua bowed respectfully. Although this wasn't considered a dual cultivation ceremony, Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. Get up. Kai Haisong smiled through his tears and extended his right hand to lift Xiao Hua up. However, he was satisfied. Kai Shansong and the rest, as well as Kai Yingjun and the other juniors, weren't too happy. The difference between Li Zongbao and Xiao Hua was obvious. Moreover, Li Zongbao's name was too famous now. Although Fairy Hong Xia, Xiao Mao, and Xiao Hua followed closely behind, they were still far away. These people were complaining that Fairy Hong Xia didn't look for Li Zongbao, but went to look for Xiao Hua instead. In fact, when Kai Haisong lifted Xiao Hua up with his right hand, he looked at Li Zongbao with some regret. He was still a little puzzled as to why Li Zongbao addressed him as senior. Xiao Hua stood up respectfully, but Fairy Hong Xia didn't. Instead, she clapped her hands and took out a jade box from her storage bag. She raised it above her head and said, Father, this is your daughter's gift to you. Please accept it. Oh? Looking at Fairy Hong Xia's respect and the jade box, Kai Haisong's heart was already full. He said lovingly, you child, you've left enough things for the Kai family of Lu Yang. These things are all for cultivation. You can use them as much as you want. Father doesn't lack anything. Father, this thing has nothing to do with cultivation. It's your daughter's filial piety. Take a look first. Fairy Hong Xia said coquettishly. Although Fairy Hong Xia wasn't young anymore, her appearance was still the same. Looking at her, Kai Haisong felt that she was still the child he used to love. He couldn't help but smile and said, I know. Father, take a look. When Kai Haisong opened it, he was stunned. It was just an ugly elixir. He really couldn't tell what kind of elixir it was. However, he still happily said, good child. Father will accept this item. Get up. -11. Chapter 2988. Hee Daddy, you don't even know what this is. At this moment, Fairy Hong Xia stood up and laughed. As long as it's from you, Father will like it no matter what it is. Kai Haisong seemed to be afraid that Fairy Hong Xia would be sad and hurriedly kept it. This is a rejuvenation pill. Fairy Hong Xia's expression was indifferent. She looked at Kai Shansong and company and said, Father, you have given your all for the Kai family of Lu Yang and have worked hard for your entire life. Your daughter would like to thank you for everything you have done for the Kai family of Lu Yang. Also, I've only received one rejuvenation pill this time. However, I promise uncles that I'll send the other rejuvenation pills to Lu Yang in half a year's time. Rejuvenation pill. After the Great War of the Sword Path, the name of Sky Patrol City became famous again in the three kingdoms of cultivation. The rejuvenation pill's name was more suitable than the ageless pill, making it one of the most coveted pills for female cultivators. Although Kai Haisong and the rest were not very interested in restoring their youth, they knew the name of this pill. Not only was Kai Haisong shocked, but all the disciples of the Kai family were shocked. They might not know the effects of the rejuvenation pill, but they knew the price of the rejuvenation pill. It was definitely not something the Kai family of Lu Yang could afford. Hearing that it was such a precious elixir, Kai Haisong did not hesitate. He quickly reached into his clothes and took out the jade box. He handed it to Fairy Hong Xia and said, Father, why are you taking this elixir? Or are you? However, when Kai Haisong's gaze fell on Fairy Hong Xia's youthful face, he immediately came to a realization. He shook his head with a smile and turned to pass it to Xiaohua. Unfortunately, Xiaohua's face was even younger than Fairy Hongxia's, Shansong. Finally, Kai Haisong looked at Kai Shansong behind him and handed the jade box over. He said, "Big brother is old, so it's useless to take this. You've contributed a lot to the Kai family, so I'll give this to you." A look of surprise flashed across Kai Shansong's face, but he shook his head and said, "Big brother, this rejuvenation pill is a gift from Fairy Hongxia. It has nothing to do with us. If I want it, it must be given to me by June." "That's right, big brother." Kai Fengsong smiled and said, "Fairy Hongxia said that we'll have it within half a year's time. You should take it first. Let us see the effects of this legendary rejuvenation pill." "Yes, father. You don't have to be so polite. Boy here guarantees to uncle, as well as June and Hongsheng, that after half a year, there will definitely be a rejuvenation pill for them." Fairy Hongxia said word by word, glancing at Xiaohua beside her. "That's right, Senior Kai. Since Senior Sister has already said so, you can rest assured." Xiaohua hurriedly moved forward and said, "If Senior Sister doesn't have the time to come back, it's the same for Junior to make a trip." All right." Kai Haisong thought for a moment and smiled. "Then this old man will also keep it and consume it together after half a year." Hearing this, Fairy Hongxia and Xiaohua's hearts thumped at the same time. Almost at the same time, they said, "Don't." Hongxia Fairy looked at Xiaohua and said, "Father, you should take it when we are at home. Let your daughter see what you were like when you were young." "Alas, it's a pity that your mother died early." Kai Haisong sighed. "Oh yes." Hongxia Fairy was stunned. She looked at her uncles and said, "Auntie and the others will also get it. Niece, let's think of a way together." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He wanted to send a voice transmission, but he didn't dare to disturb Hongxia Fairy's mood. This rejuvenation pill was indeed excellent, but if there were really too many of them, wouldn't Luyang's Kai family become the target of public criticism? How could a small cultivation family withstand the covetous eyes of a golden core female cultivator? Fortunately, Kai Fengsong said in time, "Hongxia, although you have military merits and the Huanhua sect will reward you with these, you don't have to be too embarrassed. Uncle and the others don't have to worry about it." Hearing this, Xiaohua hurriedly stretched out his hand and took out a storage pouch from his bosom. He respectfully handed it to Kai Haisong and said, "Senior Kai, this is a small token of appreciation from Junior and Senior Li Zhengbao. Please accept it." These things were already prepared by Xiaohua on the way here. It was just that he didn't tell Fairy Hongxia about it. When Fairy Hongxia saw that Xiaohua was being polite, she was also very happy in her heart. Her previous grudge had dissipated by quite a bit. "Hehe, Xiaohua, the last time you came to my Kai family, you brought a lot of good things. My Kai family benefited a lot because of this. I've always wanted to thank you. Now that I'm here again, there's no need to be so courteous." Kai Haisong said and looked at Li Zhengbao. "Fellow cultivator Li is an outstanding disciple of the Utopia faction. It's good that you're here in Luyang. There's no need to be courteous." Li Zhengbao knew that these were Xiaohua's things. However, he wouldn't be courteous to Xiaohua. His face was a little red as he bowed. "It's my duty, it's my duty." Li Zhengbao didn't know how to speak before Hongxia Fairy explained his situation to Kai Haisong. Moreover, he was a man of few words. "Father." Hongxia Fairy knew that this matter needed to be reported to Kai Haisong alone. She whispered, "Boy, there's something." Kai Haisong handed the storage bag to Kai Shansong and said, "Wait a moment. You came back at the wrong time, huh?" At this moment, Kai Shansong exclaimed from the side. Not only did it cause Kai Haisong to frown, but everyone's gaze also fell on him before he could finish his sentence. However, Kai Shansong didn't care about the gazes of others. He handed the storage bag to Kai Haisong and stuttered, "Big brother. You take a look." Hongxia Fairy didn't think it was strange. She looked at Xiaohua. Her reproachful eyes clearly said, "At least you know your place." Hehe. Xiaohua was about to smile in return when Hongxia Fairy glared at him and looked at the storage bag in Kai Haisong's hand. Sure enough, even though Kai Haisong was mentally prepared, He could see the items in the storage bag. There were a lot of spirit stones, flying swords, magical weapons, and especially many jade slips. Although Kai Haisong didn't look at the jade slips, he knew that they must be secret skills. Nephew Xiao, this is too precious. Kai Haisong wanted to return the storage bag to Xiao Hua, but he was reluctant. The items in the storage bag were not comparable to the rejuvenation elixir. They were exactly what the Kai family needed to carry forward their development. As a cultivation clan, Luyang's Kai family cannot compare to Qingyang's Kai family. Not only are their descendants' bloodlines not pure, they are also lacking in cultivation methods and secret techniques. If they are compared to cultivation sects, they are also lacking in magic tools and spirit stones. Although Xiao Hua's storage pouch cannot instantly raise Luyang's Kai family to the level of a cultivation sect, it will not be difficult for it to surpass Qingyang's Kai family. It's okay, Senior Kai. The items in the storage bag belong to me and Senior Li. They have nothing to do with the Utopia faction or the Imperial Thunder sect. Xiao Hua smiled. And these items, I'm just replicating them. You don't have to take it to heart. Even if they're replicating, this gift is too much. Kai Haisong sighed and bowed again to thank Li Zongbao. Thank you for your generous gift. Kai Haisong naturally gave most of the storage bag to Li Zongbao. It's my duty, it's my duty. Li Zongbao returned the bow awkwardly. At this moment, two divine thoughts swept over from afar. They scanned the crowd unscrupulously. Then, one divine thought locked onto Li Zongbao, while the other stayed on Xiao Hua. Fairy Hong Xia frowned slightly. Kai Haisong smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, Hong Xia, today is the day that the head of the Kai family of Qingyang, Kai Yang, and the great elder, Kai Hongfeng, are coming to Luyang. They just sent a message amulet. Father brought the disciples out to welcome them. Who knew that they would bump into you on your way home? You're no longer a disciple of the Kai family of Luyang. You just have to watch from the side. Yes, I understand. Fairy Hong Xia looked at Kai Haisong and knew that things were not as simple as they seemed. However, since Kai Haisong did not want to talk about it and time was of the essence, Fairy Hong Xia did not ask too much. Disciples, get ready to welcome the head of the Kai family of Qingyang. Kai Haisong carefully kept the storage bag and waved his hand as he said loudly, Yes, we understand. The disciples' morale was high and their voices soared into the sky. The Kai family of Qingyang has always sent housekeepers and even deacons to Luyang. The most solemn one was when the great elder brought Kai Yuxia to seek revenge for Kai Zhuoxia. This time, even the head of the family came personally. It seems like this is not a small matter. Fairy Hong Xia looked at the two figures that gradually appeared and a thoughtful expression appeared on her face. Not long after, two sage-like cultivators appeared in front of everyone. The one in front of them had a rectangular face, a pair of slender eyes, and two white eyebrows that slanted deep into his temples. Although there were many wrinkles on his face, they were not too dense, and his ruddy face carried an arrogant expression. This person's appearance was somewhat similar. He was the head of the Kai family of Qingyang, Kai Yang, a cultivator who had just stepped into the late foundation establishment stage. Only the cultivator behind Kai Yang was clearly recognized by Xiao Hua. It was the great elder of the Kai family of Qingyang, Kai Hongfeng, who had hunted him down here decades ago. The divine sense that had locked onto him was also his. However, at this time, Kai Hongfeng was no longer the early foundation establishment stage cultivator of the past. His cultivation had also reached the middle foundation establishment stage. Moreover, when he saw Kai Hongfeng's mouth moving slightly, and the way Kai Yang looked at him was different. There was some hatred in his eyes. Xiao Hua understood that he had been remembered by the head of the Kai family of Qingyang. Kai Yang and Kai Hongfeng descended from the sky. Kai Haisong led a group of Luyang's Kai family disciples to greet them. Kai Yang and Kai Hongfeng calmly accepted everyone's greetings, then raised their hands and said, All of you, rise. Then, Kai Yang ignored Kai Haisong and the others and turned to salute Li Zongbao. The head of the Kai family of Qingyang, Kai Yang, greets fellow Taoist Li Zongbao. Congratulations to fellow Taoist Li for leading the first team of the Dao sect's meeting hall to obtain outstanding military merits in the Great Dao Sword Battle. -11. Chapter 2989.
Yes.
Li Zongbao was respectful to Kai Haisong, but not to Kai Yang. He returned the greeting casually. The war is over. My achievements are history. There's no need to mention it again. I admire fellow cultivator Li for treating fame and fortune as fleeting clouds. If possible, I wonder if I could invite fellow cultivator Li to the Qingyang Kai family as a guest? The thousands of disciples of the Qingyang Kai family admire fellow cultivator Li very much. Kai Yang didn't seem to find Li Zongbao's attitude inappropriate and asked politely, I came here with junior sister Hongxia for some business. I'll return to the Utopia faction when I'm done. Li Zongbao was a little impatient, but he didn't want to cause trouble for Kai Haisong. He said evasively, if there's an opportunity in the future, it won't be too late for me to go. Seeing that Li Zongbao didn't refuse immediately, which was different from the rumors, Kai Yang was very happy. He hurriedly took out a message charm and handed it to Li Zongbao. He smiled and said, if fellow cultivator Li comes to visit, please send a message to me as soon as possible. The disciples of the Qingyang Kai family welcome you. Yes. Li Zongbao's face was calm. Although there was anxiety in his eyes, he still reached out to take it. Fellow cultivator Xiao, Kai Hongfeng said coldly without waiting for Kai Yang to speak. This is the second time we've met. Yes. Xiao Hua looked up and down at Kai Hongfeng. He didn't seem to have any intention of fighting, so he nodded calmly. I didn't expect that a little level 4 Qi refining cultivator would become a foundation establishment cultivator who dominated the Taoist sword war. Kai Hongfeng continued, however, how are you going to explain the fact that fellow Taoist Xiao killed Kai Yingxia, a disciple of my Kai family? How will I explain it? Xiao Hua smiled. I've already told you about this matter several decades ago. Could it be that great elder Kai has already forgotten? Haha, of course I remember it. Kai Hongfeng laughed. But this is the life of a direct disciple of the Kai family. I don't know if fellow cultivator Xiao will give us an explanation now? Hongfeng, Kai Yang scolded him as expected. Why do you keep harping on what happened in the past and refuse to let go? Who was fellow cultivator Xiao before? Who is fellow Taoist Xiao now? In the past, fellow Taoist Xiao was just a rogue cultivator. But now, fellow Taoist Xiao is not only an elite disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, but also a member of the first team in the Tao Sect's discussion hall. He is a person with outstanding military exploits and is not far from being able to command the entire Shi country. How could he not give the Kai family an explanation? Even if he doesn't give us an explanation, won't the Imperial Thunder Sect give us an explanation? Won't the leader of the first squad give us an explanation? Li Zongbao stared blankly. He didn't know that Xiao Hua actually had a grudge with Qingyang's Kai family. However, he looked at Xiao Hua and then at Kai Yang. He said indifferently, this is junior brother Zhao's own matter. It has nothing to do with my discussion hall's first team. If you have anything to say, just tell him directly. I won't interfere. Hearing this, Kai Yang's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he didn't quite understand. He was obviously giving Li Zongbao face. Li Zongbao only needed to say one word. No, just half a word, and he would definitely accept it. But he didn't think. Heh. Xiao Hua also chuckled. Kai family head. I'm sure you've heard the great elders report on what happened that day. The truth of the matter is right there. But this Xiao is not willing to talk about it. If Kai family head wants to seek justice for Kai Yingxia, then I will accept it. At this time, not only does it have nothing to do with the discussion hall's first team, it also has nothing to do with the Imperial Thunder Sect. There, Kai Yang laughed. He could only reply, no matter what the matter is, and no matter how great the impact fellow Taoist Xiao has caused, fellow Taoist Xiao is after all a great hero of the Shi country. How can this old man make a move? Today, in front of fellow Taoist Li of the Utopia sect, this old man will make a decision. The previous matter will be overturned. If fellow Taoist Xiao accompanies fellow Taoist Li to my Qingyang's Kai family, my Kai family will still treat you as a distinguished guest. Oh, thank you so much, Kai family head. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. However, he didn't want to be at odds with the Qingyang's Kai family and make things difficult for Kai Haisong, so he bowed and said. Unexpectedly, Kai Yang didn't return the bow, but accepted it directly. He really regarded Xiao Hua as a cultivator in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. Then he turned to Fairy Hong Xia with a solemn face and raised his hand. This old man greets Fairy Hong Xia. Fairy Hong Xia naturally didn't dare to be negligent. She hurriedly bowed and returned the bow. She smiled and said, "Family head, you don't have to be so polite. The fairy's order was just a joke. Family head is a senior. How can you address me in such a manner? If you were still a disciple of the Kai family, this old man would definitely call you Fairy Hong Xia and definitely not say a word more." Kai Yang said lightly. "However, you are now the disciple of the Huanhua sect, and also a member of the discussion hall's first team in the Great Battle of Dao Sword. Your name is now known all over the world. As the family head of the Kai family, this old man has to address you as Fairy Hong Xia. Senior, you think too highly of this junior." Fairy Hong Xia frowned slightly, but still nodded. Fairy Hong Xia is from the Kai family. Now that you are a disciple of the Huanhua sect, you have achieved great military exploits. While the Huanhua sect is proud of you, you have also brought glory to the Kai family. You have set an excellent example for the disciples of the Kai family. It is enough for the cultivators of the three kingdoms to see the prestige of the Kai family. This is excellent. Even if this old man, even the previous generations of family heads of the Kai family, would not be able to achieve such a feat. Not only the Kai family of Luyang, but also the Kai family of Qingyang. All the disciples of the Kai family will be proud of you. This junior wouldn't dare," Fairy Hong Xia said softly. However, as expected, Kai Yang changed the topic and said, "You are now a disciple of the Huanhua sect. You must remember your status. Although you have military exploits, but you must not be arrogant and cannot be complacent." Fellow Taoist Li said it very well just now. Military exploits represent the past and have become fleeting clouds. You must not sleep on your military exploits. Yes, this junior understands. Fairy Hong Xia's frown deepened, but she still replied, "However, the war is not over yet. Why did you suddenly return to Luyang? Did you come back on the orders of the Huanhua sect to visit your family?" As he spoke, Kai Yang's gaze swept to his left, but he did not see the token of the Huanhua sect. Now is the time of war. Would the Huanhua sect allow you to return to Luyang? This junior was out training and happened to pass by Luyang. I thought that I had not seen my family for a long time, so I came back to take a look. Fairy Hong Xia bit her lip, her voice even softer. You are filial. To think of the Kai family, this old man has to say that you are not bad." Kai Yang nodded. "However, you do not have the token of the Huanhua sect. It is not proper for you to return to Luyang, so you should hurry back. This old man will pretend that I did not see you." Fellow Taoist Kai, Li Zongbao spoke up. "I have been rushing about and am indeed tired. I need to rest for a while before I can move." "All right." Kai Yang nodded. Fellow Taoist Li's words make sense. The first team of the meeting hall can rest anywhere. Naturally, Luyang can too. However, Kai Hongfeng said, "Since you are part of the first team of the meeting hall, you are a disciple of a cultivation sect. You cannot interfere with the family affairs of the cultivation aristocratic families." Li Zongbao frowned and nodded. Indeed, aristocratic family affairs are handled by the aristocratic families themselves. The various sects and clans will not interfere. Kai Yang continued. "Since fellow Taoist Li has said so, I can rest assured. Moreover, Fairy Hong Xia from the Huanhua sect is here today. This saves me the trouble of explaining things to her alone in the future." Oh? When Fairy Hong Xia heard Kai Yang first accuse her of being a disciple of the Huanhua sect, then confirmed Li Zongbao and Xiao Hua's identities as part of the first team of the meeting hall, and then brought up the aristocratic family affairs, she felt that something was amiss. She was surprised and quickly looked up at Kai Haisong. As expected, Kai Haisong had a complicated expression on his face. Clearly, he understood Kai Yang's arrival and his intentions very well. Fairy Hong Xia felt a pang in her heart. She knew that her father would rather take on this responsibility himself. He would rather put himself in a difficult position than let her know. After Kai Yang finished speaking, he no longer paid any attention to Fairy Hong Xia and the rest. He turned to Kai Haisong and said lightly, Haisong, what I told you a few days ago, have you thought it through? Reporting to family head, I have thought it through. Kai Haisong did not dare to delay and quickly replied, what do you mean? A smile appeared on Kai Yang's face. Do you think this old man's suggestion is good? Kai Haisong took a deep breath and shook his head. Reporting to family head, although the Kai family of Luyang is a branch of the Kai family of Qingyang, for thousands of years, we have been living in a remote corner. In Luyang, in Yang Cauldron Mountain, we have been deeply rooted in Luyang. There is no reason for us to move to Qingyang and become one with the Kai family of Qingyang. Then, you are against it? Kai Yang's face was obviously stunned as he asked coldly, That's right, I am against family head's suggestion. Kai Haisong nodded. Is it your idea or everyone's idea? Kai Yang glanced at Kai Shansong and the rest and asked again. Kai Haisong hurriedly said, I am the family head of the Kai family of Luyang. I am the only one who can make this decision. I don't need their opinions. Haisong, oh Haisong, I have overestimated you. Kai Yang shook his head vigorously with a pained expression. He seemed to be extremely disappointed. I thought that you would place the interests of the Kai family above everything else. But now, you have really disappointed me. You are so short-sighted. You only see your own power and forgot about the development of the Kai family. This really hurts me. Kai Haisong, Kai Hongfeng, who was beside him, also mocked him. Now that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on Xiaoyu continent has changed greatly, all kinds of cultivation techniques and secret techniques are gradually losing their effectiveness. The future of the disciples of the cultivation sects is bleak. As for the disciples of the cultivation sects, because of their bloodline, they are like fish in water in the mutated spiritual energy. Many of them have awakened their true spirit bloodline and obtained true spirit celestial bodies. As a result, the strength of those sects is rapidly expanding, and the speed of their development is much faster than before. Our Kai family is the descendant of the Ice Phoenix. Our true spirit bloodline is famous in Xiaoyu continent. We should be standing at the forefront during this turbulent time. How can you be so short-sighted? -11. Chapter 2990. Due to various historical reasons, our Kai family has split up quite a bit. Kai Yang also tried to persuade him. And your Kai family of Luyang is one of the bigger branches. If you all move back to Qingyang, our Kai family's power will definitely increase by a lot. In particular, our Kai family of Qingyang will also be open to the Kai family of Luyang. This is killing two birds with one stone. It's also something that I've discussed with the elders for a long time. You can't do this for your own selfish reasons. Patriarch Qingyang. Without waiting for Kai Yang to finish, Kai Shansong immediately said, You may mean well, but our Kai family of Luyang has lived here for thousands of years and is already used to the scenery here. Before the Kai family of Qingyang, our Kai family of Luyang developed extremely well. In the future, all the disciples of the Kai family of Luyang also feel that we can live better with our own strength. So, at this point, Kai Shansong dragged his voice and said, All the disciples of the Kai family of Luyang have unanimously agreed to stay in Luyang. This is not the decision of the patriarch of the Kai family of Luyang alone. How dare you? Kai Hongfeng scolded. Kai Shansong, what right do you have to speak here? Kai Shansong gritted his teeth and lowered his head slightly, suppressing his rebuttal. Haisong, the benefits of having all the disciples of the Kai family in one place far outweigh the disadvantages. I've already explained the details in the jade slip I gave you earlier. If the Kai family of Qingyang and the Kai family of Luyang work together, it'll be 2 wins and 2 losses. You must consider this carefully. Kai Yang looked at Kai Haisong, Kai Shansong, and the others and continued to persuade earnestly. Patriarch Qingyang, please understand. Kai Haisong bit his lip and continued to shake his head. The Kai family of Luyang has been separated from the Kai family of Qingyuan for too long. How can we move just like that? This matter needs to be considered in the long run. Kai Haisong. Kai Hongfeng's face paled again. He said coldly, This matter has already been unanimously approved by the elders of the Kai family. If your Kai family of Luyang is still a branch of the Kai family of Qingyuan, You must listen to the arrangements of the Kai family of Qing'un. Patriarch. This matter is too complicated. It needs to be considered in the long run. Kai Haisong hurriedly cried out. Haisong, you've really disappointed me. This last chance has slipped away from your hands. Don't blame me for punishing you. Kai Yang let out a long sigh. He looked at Fairy Hong Xia, whose expression was not good, and said, Now, in front of the disciples of the Kai family of the Huanhua sect, I will let her know that some of my decisions are not made without thinking. They are not made on a whim. As he spoke, Kai Yang clapped his hands and took out a token similar to the Phoenix token. He raised it high above his head and shouted, Luyang's Kai family's Kai Haisong refuses to accept the decision of the Kai family's Elder Council. He doesn't place the Kai family's future in his eyes and only considers his own personal interests. He is no longer able to convince the masses and is no longer qualified to lead the Kai family of Luyang. Now, I request the Kai family's Phoenix token to remove Kai Haisong from the position of Luyang's Kai family's patriarch and hand it over to Luyang's Kai family's Kai Shansong. All Kai family disciples, listen up. Phoenix token? When Xiao Hua saw the Phoenix token in Kai Yang's hand, he couldn't help but look at Fairy Hong Xia. However, Fairy Hong Xia was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She still didn't take out the Phoenix token that she had inherited from the Phoenix inheritance. Not only that, the Phoenix mark between her eyebrows had been hidden by her at some point. Patriarch. Just as Xiao Hua looked at Fairy Hong Xia, Kai Shansong shouted, Big Brother is the true patriarch of the Kai family. This junior's talent is shallow and cannot be compared to Big Brother. This junior cannot take over the position of patriarch of the Kai family. Humph. How can the position of patriarch of the Kai family of Luyang be decided by the likes of you? Our Kai family's elder council has already made a decision, and there is no reason to change it. Kai Shansong, you have to accept it even if you don't want to. As Kai Yang spoke, he looked around and saw that the disciples of the Kai family of Luyang were all indignant. He raised the Phoenix token in his hand and said, This is our Kai family's Phoenix token. As a disciple of the Kai family and a descendant of the Ice Phoenix bloodline, seeing this token is like seeing our ancestors. Who is dissatisfied? Kneel. Suddenly, a clear phoenix cry sounded from the Phoenix token. Immediately, a phoenix celestial body flew out from Kai Yang's body. A powerful aura was emitted from the Phoenix token as Kai Yang let out a thunderous roar. Plop plop. Several disciples in the 7th stage of Qi refining could not resist the power of the Phoenix token and involuntarily knelt on the ground. Which Kai family disciple dares to disobey the Phoenix token? All of you kneel. Kai Hongfeng shouted. However, following Kai Hongfeng's voice, an even more furious and shrill voice came from Fairy Hong Xia's mouth. Xiao Hua, do you still want to enter my Kai family? Xiao Hua was taken aback. He had originally thought that Fairy Hong Xia would release her own Ice Phoenix Dharma body, but he hadn't expected that Fairy Hong Xia would be so meticulous. She didn't give Qingyang Kai family any leverage at all, and actually let him take action. Since his wife had spoken, what else did Xiao Hua have to worry about? Xiao Hua let out a hee-hee and smacked his forehead with his hand. Wang, a huge gust of wind whistled out from Xiao Hua's body, and a wave of pressure several times stronger than the Phoenix token was emitted at the same time. Moreover, as Xiao Hua brushed his hand away from his forehead, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth instantly gathered, and a huge palm was born in midair. With a thunderous momentum, it grabbed at the 30-meter-tall Phoenix Dharma body. This is probably the nascent soul stage. Xiao Hua's pressure swept across the area. All the Kai family disciples, including Kai Yang and Kai Hongfeng, immediately froze. They could not even move their little fingers. In particular, a kind of fear came from the bottom of their hearts. It was almost an instinctive feeling. They all let out the same groan from the bottom of their hearts. When Xiao Hua's nascent soul hand appeared, a power that could control heaven and earth was released from the nascent soul hand. It firmly grasped Kai Yang's Phoenix celestial body and Kai Hongfeng's physical body. A kind of incomparable shock emerged from the Kai family's hearts. They almost could not believe that Xiao Hua, who was only at the middle foundation establishment stage, suddenly became a nascent soul stage Xiaohua. Wu. Wu Ming. Kaiyang suddenly woke up and his face changed dramatically. Kacha. Kaiyang's phoenix celestial body, which was not very clear to begin with, was quickly destroyed. Pieces of it cracked and slowly sank into Kaiyang's physical body. Do you want to live or die? Xiaohua laughed sinisterly. The nascent soul hand fell and grabbed the two arrogant foundation establishment stage cultivators in his hand. It was as if he was holding two little chicks. Humph, Fairy Hong Xia sneered. She did not answer. Instead, she said, this is what fellow Taoist Xiao did. It has nothing to do with the Kai family of Lu Yang. Their life and death is up to fellow Taoist Xiao. Senior Xiao. Kai Haisong hurriedly called out from the side. Family head Kai Yang was thinking of the Kai family bloodline. Although this action was a bit reckless, but his intention was not wrong. Senior, please be magnanimous and don't hurt the family head of Kai family. Humph. Xiaohua snorted coldly and scolded. Kai Yang, did you hear that clearly? If the family head of Kai family of Lu Yang did not plead for you, I would definitely take your life. Today's matter is my doing. If you want to find trouble with me, you can come to the Imperial Thunder Sect. I will welcome you at any time. Moreover, you must keep today's matter a secret. If I find out that my secret was discovered, I will definitely kill my way to the Kai family of Lu Yang. Scram. After he finished speaking, Xiaohua waved his sleeve and threw out his nascent soul hand. He didn't wait for Kai Yang and Kai Hongfeng to speak and threw them into the air. In a moment, they disappeared without a trace. The phoenix token that fell into the air turned into a shooting star and chased after them. Xiaohua looked at the phoenix token that he did not know if was real or fake. He did not stop them and waved his sleeves again. The nascent soul's hand disappeared, and he slowly descended from the air. Silence, silence, incomparable silence. All the Kai family disciples, including Kai Haisong, did not dare to breathe loudly as they looked at Xiaohua carefully. Whether it was Nameless or a nascent soul grandmaster, they were all characters that the Kai family disciples did not dare to imagine. None of them could wake up from this contrast. That's right. Just now, an hour ago, other than Kai Haisong, everyone was secretly complaining that Fairy Hongxia did not capture Li Zongbao. But after an hour, Xiaohua revealed his strength and easily captured Kai Yang, who was in the late foundation establishment stage, and Kai Hongfeng, who was in the middle foundation establishment stage. Who would dare to look down on Fairy Hongxia? Who would dare to look down on Xiaohua, a small rogue cultivator who came to Lu Yang's Kai family several decades ago? Only 40 years? Or 50 years? Kai Haisong was shocked, but he slowly came to his senses. An incomparable feeling welled up in his heart. I've only cultivated from the 10th layer of Qi, refining to the early stage of foundation establishment, and yet I feel so proud and self-satisfied. After all, it's been a long time since a foundation establishment patriarch has appeared in the Kai clan. But, compared to this Xiaohua, I's days have been lived like a dog's body. That day, he was only at the 4th level of Qi refining. Today, he is actually a nascent soul grandmaster. All the cultivators below the golden core stage in the 3 cultivation countries have lived like a dog's body. The first stage of the Great War of Sword Dao is based on the Golden Core stage. Xiaohua is a nascent soul stage cultivator. In the Great War of Sword Dao, who would be his opponent? This Li Zongbao, who is known as the #1 cultivator below the Golden Core stage, would probably follow Xiaohua's lead. With him, the discussion hall's first team would naturally be able to achieve outstanding merits. That Qinjian, who is at the 3rd level of the sword transformation stage, would naturally be killed by him. All the merits of the discussion hall's first team were obtained by Xiaohua alone. Everyone in the Dao sect guessed that the answer to the mystery lies with Xiaohua alone. Li Zongbao, who is the center of attention, is only a puppet, a shield in front of Xiaohua. All the unimaginable merits of the discussion hall's first team. There is only one truth. -11. Chapter 2991. Senior Xiao. Kai Haisong stuttered, not knowing how to address him. After regaining his senses, he hurriedly bowed respectfully. Earlier, We were too slow. At the same time, all the Kai family disciples regained their senses and bowed, all of them wanting to address Xiaohua as senior. Xiaohua's methods towards others were like thunderbolts, but towards Fairy Hongxia's family, how could he dare to show the slightest bit of negligence? He hurriedly flicked his sleeves, and a powerful force was generated, holding everyone back. He rushed towards Kai Haisong and said anxiously, "Senior Kai, will you still allow me to enter the Kai family in the future?" Fairy Hongxia, who was standing at the side, immediately laughed out loud. She was also filled with hatred just now, but she could not directly contend with the Kai family head. So she asked Xiaohua to help. She was supposed to transmit her voice, but in her extreme anger, she forgot to do so. Hearing Xiaohua's aggrieved cry, her face was flushed red, and her eyes were filled with pride. Oh, yes, Kai Haisong was also bursting with joy. With such a nascent soul stage son-in-law in Luyang's Kai family, let alone the Qingyang Kai family, in the entire country of in the entire 3 kingdoms of cultivation, who would dare to challenge Luyang's Kai family? Father, don't bow to him. Fairy Hongxia curled her lips and said, his nascent soul stage cultivation is just a bluff. It's just a golden core stage cultivation. But when he brings out his nascent soul stage spiritual sense, it can scare others. He really is a nascent soul stage cultivator. Everyone suddenly understood. Fairy Hongxia's words were a little too obvious. How could others believe it? They only thought that she was being modest. Even if he's a golden core stage cultivator, this old man can't compare to him. Kai Haisong said with a smile, "Come, Xiao, calling me Xiaohua is enough." Xiaohua smiled tactfully. Xiaohua, this isn't the first time you've come to my Kai family. Last time, this old man already treated you rudely. Today, I won't dare to do it again." Kai Haisong really wanted to praise Li Zongbao, but when the words reached the tip of his tongue, he felt that they wouldn't be appropriate, so he could only force himself to swallow them back. After a few simple words, he turned to Li Zongbao and said, "Fellow Taoist Li, this is your first time visiting our Kai family. Although we didn't open our doors to welcome fellow Taoist Li, by a freak combination of factors, we did so to welcome fellow Taoist Li to our Kai family. Fellow Taoist Li, please." "Senior Kai, you're too courteous." Li Zongbao's words stunned Kai Haisong, but what happened next confused Kai Haisong even more. Because Xiaohua had already revealed his cultivation base. In accordance with the etiquette of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation, Xiaohua should have walked in front of Li Zongbao. Although Li Zongbao had received Kai Haisong's invitation, this invitation came after Xiaohua's, so he naturally didn't move. Instead, he waited for Xiaohua to walk first. However, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Senior brother Li, now that we're home, if we're talking about etiquette, senior brother should still go first." Li Zongbao's tense face revealed a trace of unnaturalness, but he didn't refute. He walked in front of Xiaohua, while Xiaohua followed behind him. "We're home? Talking about etiquette?" Kai Haisong really couldn't make sense of it, but he suddenly remembered what Fairy Hongxia wanted to say to him before Kai Yang arrived. He turned to look at Fairy Hongxia. "Let's talk inside." When Fairy Hongxia saw the rare joy in the Kai family, or rather, the jubilant atmosphere, she felt a little miserable in her heart. It was as if there was one less person to stick a dogwood in all the places. Kai Haisong nodded and invited Fairy Hongxia to lead the way. Then, he led his clan brothers and followed behind. The Kai family's guest hall had been completely renovated and was much larger than before. Xiaohua and the others sat in the guest seats, accompanied by Kai Haisong and several other Kai Family Foundation establishment cultivators. There were also a dozen 11th layer Qi refinement disciples standing below them. It didn't seem crowded at all. It was obvious how fast the Kai family had developed over the past few decades. A few pretty Qi refinement cultivators deftly served spiritual tea and spiritual fruits. Every disciple stole glances at Xiaohua, then winked at Fairy Hongxia, and left with a smile. Even the Qi refinement cultivators standing in wait stared at Xiaohua without blinking. Not every Kai family disciple had seen a nascent soul cultivator before. Xiaohua was the first nascent soul cultivator they had seen in their lives. What's more, This nascent soul cultivator was their future relative. Fellow Taoist Li, please have some tea. Xiaohua, please have some tea. Since Xiaohua allowed Li Zongbao to enter the Kai family first, Kai Haisong put Li Zongbao's name first even though he didn't understand why. Please, Li Zongbao knew this was a necessary etiquette. Although he was a little anxious, he had to wait. With Xiaohua, this so-called brother-in-law, he couldn't lose face in the eyes of the Kai family. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Kai Haisong knew Fairy Hongxia and the others didn't just return to Luoyang to visit, so he didn't say anything else. He didn't even mention the battle between Dao and Sword. He said, Hongxia, what did you say just now? Ingjun, let the Qi refinement cultivators leave. We have something important to discuss. Fairy Hongxia commanded without any trace of politeness. Also, prepare a family banquet. Make it clear that no one is allowed to come within 100 feet of the guest hall. Yes, little brother understands. Kai Ingjun didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly got up and ordered the disciples to leave. Although the Qi refinement cultivators were a little reluctant, when they thought about how their master had something important to do and how they could get closer to a nascent soul cultivator during the family banquet later, they happily left. After the Qi refinement cultivators left, Kai Ingjun and Kai Hongxing whispered again, Elder sister, do we need to leave? You're the candidates for the next patriarch of our Kai family. This is our family's housework, so you don't need to leave. Fairy Hongxia looked at Kai Haisong and gave her instructions very naturally. In fact, she had already done this long before she left Luoyang and joined Huanhua sect. Today, she returned to the Kai family with a cultivation base in the late stage of the foundation building realm, so no one felt that it was inappropriate. Yes, Kai Ingjun and Kai Hongxing sat down obediently. They lowered their heads and looked down, leaving only their ears exposed. Father, it's like this. Fairy Hongxia glanced at the curious gazes of Kai Haisong and the others. She took a deep breath and told them about the matter between Kai Zhuoxia and Li Zongbao. She also told them about the result of using the Netherlink mirror during their trip to Mount Wan. Finally, she said to the stunned crowd, who couldn't believe their ears, So, I brought senior brother Li and Xiao Hua back in a hurry, wanting to see elder sisters, grave? How is this possible? After a long while, Kai Haisong rubbed his eyes and said with a hint of sadness, Back then, Zhuoxia's corpse was sent by Xiao Hua, and we also examined it. Big brother, Kai Shansong said anxiously, Hongxia and Zongbao have already gone to Mount Wan. Even the soul cultivators there said that Zhuoxia isn't dead, so she's definitely not dead. What are we waiting for? Let's go and take a look. At this time, Kai Haisong was startled, and he jumped up from the jade chair with a bang. Today had given him a lot of stimulation. Not to mention that Xiao Hua was Fairy Hongxia's lover, not to mention that Xiao Hua had actually become a gold core cultivator, and not to mention that Li Zongbao had actually also become his son-in-law. Just the fact that Kai Zhuoxia was still alive was something that he had never dreamed of. He was really numb. He said, That's right, Hongxia. We'll go to the grave now. The second one to jump up was naturally Li Zongbao. He had been waiting for a long time and had been enduring, challenging his limits. Now that he heard Kai Haisong's order, he could no longer hold back. Kai Fengsong and the others looked at Li Zongbao curiously. They really wanted to know how this young and handsome man, who was famous throughout the cultivation world, knew Kai Zhuoxia, and how he had been thinking about the dead Kai Zhuoxia for so many years. This was absolutely unimaginable in the cultivation world. However, when they saw Li Zongbao get up, they hurriedly followed him. Even if he was the son-in-law of the Kai clan, he was still a late-stage foundation establishment senior. The Kai family's burial mound was on the other side of Yang Cauldron Mountain. It was a place that was surrounded by mountains and rivers. Rows of willow trees grew luxuriantly, and thousands of willow branches swayed in the wind as they streaked across the sky. A tranquil and serene aura filled the entire valley. When they were less than a mile away from the green tiles and white walls, Kai Haisong descended from the sky and said apologetically, Zongbao, Xiao Hua, my Kai clan has a rule. Everyone who is going to the grave can't fly directly to the entrance. They can only walk for this last mile. Very good. Li Zongbao nodded and didn't say anything else. He just lowered his head and hurried on. Xiao Hua echoed, In addition, We can't even use divine sense. Hee, Xiaohua is right. However, my Kai clan didn't have many foundation establishment disciples before. We didn't even have a 12th layer Qi refinement cultivator. How could we have thought of using divine sense? Kai Haisong replied awkwardly. Oh, indeed, indeed. Xiaohua scratched his head. He was very embarrassed that his words had embarrassed the Kai clan head. When they were about 100 feet away from the grave's white walls and black doors, two Kai clan disciples around the third layer of Qi refinement hurriedly walked out from a side door. Both of them looked to be in their 30s. One of them was a male cultivator who looked rather spirited. The other was a female cultivator. Her appearance was still charming, and her figure could be considered enchanting. However, her waist was already a little too fat. The two of them should be the disciples guarding the grave. They had just received the news and came to serve them. However, the two of them stood respectfully. When Kai Haisong and the others approached, the male cultivator respectfully saluted, while the female cultivator stood there in a daze. She stared straight at the approaching Xiaohua and even forgot to salute. The male cultivator was greatly alarmed. He hastily pulled the female cultivator's clothes and indicated for her to salute. Only then did the female cultivator grit her teeth and lower her head. Xiaohua naturally sensed that he was being stared at. However, he frowned and looked at the female cultivator. Her appearance was unfamiliar. He didn't seem to recognize her. -11. Chapter 2992. Xiaohua thought about how he had visited the Kai family before. Perhaps he had seen them before, so he didn't mind. However, when the two greeted Kai Haisong, he suddenly realized, because the female cultivator called herself Kai Mei, if he wasn't mistaken, she was the little girl who had brought him to the Kai family at that time. Mayor, Kai Haisong didn't care about this. After the two greeted each other, he ordered the door to the spirit tomb to open. Xiaohua asked, "Are you that mayor? Big brother immortal?" Kai Mei was pleasantly surprised. She bowed again. I didn't expect that big brother would still remember mayor. Alas. Xiaohua sighed. He looked at the somewhat plump woman in front of him. If she hadn't cultivated to the third layer of Qi refining, and if she hadn't been born into a cultivation family, she would have already become one of the most plump people in the secular world. That childish, crisp voice, that little girl who had walked out from behind the stone sculpture in the distance, that thin and weak figure, and that pair of big, black eyes. They had all been eaten by dogs. Although those big eyes still had some shadows of the past when he looked at them carefully, it was just that those originally clear and pure eyes had now been polluted by the secular world. They were full of flattery and expectation, making Xiaohua feel inexplicably disappointed. Your grandfather. Although Xiaohua knew the ending, he still couldn't help but want to ask the unworldly expert who wasn't an unworldly expert. Thank you, Big Brother Immortal, for still remembering grandfather. Kai Mei's face was mournful. Although grandfather took Big Brother's elixir, his body was already empty. He passed away 20 years ago. And everyone has to die in this life. Your grandfather was able to do so much for Liu Yang, so he can already rest in peace. Xiaohua nodded. Then, he saw that the male cultivator had already opened the black door and was about to leave. However, he still asked casually, Mayor, are you doing well in the Kai family? Very well. Kai Mei was a bit hesitant. She timidly glanced at Kai Haisong and said, But if Big Brother Immortal and the family head are old friends, can you let me change jobs with my husband? Oh? Xiaohua was stunned, but he immediately smiled and said, I will ask Senior Kai at this time. Thank you, Big Brother Immortal. This concubine will lead the way for Gidge. Kai Mei smiled and hurriedly accompanied Xiaohua into the tomb. But Xiaohua waved his hand and said, No need. Mayor, you and your husband wait outside the tomb. Yes, this concubine understands. Kai Mei was very clever. She lowered her head and stayed where she was. Seeing Xiaohua talking to Kai Mei, how could Kai Haisong ignore it? He had already asked Kai Haisong and the others who were in charge of the manor's affairs. After entering the tomb, Kai Haisong hurriedly told him about Kai Mei. After hearing Kai Haisong's detailed explanation, Xiaohua couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. There is a mortal fate in this world, but not everyone who obtains a mortal fate. Many can become immortals. Humans were humans, and immortals were immortals. Why must they allow those who could not become immortals to become immortals? This is the Kai family's business. I have no right to interfere. It was no wonder that Xiaohua sighed. That day, Xiaohua gave Mayer a few spiritual pills and entrusted her to the Kai family. The Kai family was also honest and didn't covet those spiritual pills. Moreover, they even took Mayer into the Kai family and changed her name to Kai Mei. However, although Kai Mei was handsome, her cultivation aptitude was really limited. After dozens of years, she only cultivated to the third layer of qi refining. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Kai Mei's character wasn't good. She was especially vain, or perhaps she didn't come from a good family. When she entered the Kai family, she felt an indescribable inferiority from the bottom of her heart. But what could a female cultivator do in front of these natural shortcomings? Her blind grandfather couldn't help her at all. After Kai Mei became an adult, she used her beauty to exchange for a position in the Kai family. The reason why Kai Mei and her husband were sent to guard the tomb was because they were jealous of each other's affection. Originally, they were going to be expelled from the Kai family, but this Kai Mei was also obedient. She hurriedly admitted her crime and chose to marry her current husband. This was the last chance to stay in the Kai family. This was what Xiaohua sighed about. Not every beautiful and cute little girl would grow up to be a pretty beauty. There was also a possibility that she would grow up to be a fat ant. And the possibility was very high. However, when everyone filed in and passed through the black door, they saw many neatly repaired small tombs. In front of each tomb, there were a few faint, extremely elegant Xiaohua flowers. Moreover, in front of each tomb, there was a willow branch as thick as a little finger placed on top of the tombs. Looking at the creases under the branches, it was obvious that they were recently broken. Good. Zongbao and Xiaohua understand. Kai Haisong had just stepped into the tomb when he glanced at the tombs and explained, "Our Kai family of Luyang is only a cultivation family. We are inferior to ordinary cultivation families. Even though there is a public memorial hall for the ancestors, not all of the deceased can be preserved. Therefore, almost all of the deceased are buried in the ground, just like the people of the secular world. Perhaps there is a hint of poverty." Xiaohua knew that Li Zongbao wouldn't answer, so he continued, "Earth to earth, dust to dust. Ordinary people talk about being buried in peace. This is the principle. The Kai family's actions are also normal. It can't be considered as poverty." After Kai Haisong finished his explanation, he looked at the tombs again. As far as his eyes could see, all of the tombs were as clean as before. He knew clearly that the communication talisman had just been sent out. It was impossible for Kai Mei and her husband to have made such preparations in advance. This could only mean that Kai Mei and her husband were usually very meticulous. Kai Haisong sighed. A pitiful person must have a detestable side. However, if a prodigal son returns to his old ways, I won't exchange him for a top-grade spirit stone. Senior's words are extremely true. Xiaohua nodded. The heavenly Tao is merciful. It will always leave a glimmer of hope in a desperate situation. As long as you have the heart, you will always be able to find a way to survive. Yes, Kai Haisong was startled. Xiaohua's words were very grand. Moreover, he didn't dare to underestimate him. After all, this was the understanding of a golden core cultivator. However, if he was asked to think deeper, he couldn't. Just as Kai Haisong was frowning in thought, everyone had already arrived at a slightly remote corner under Kai Haisong's lead. A small drum that was no different from the one they had seen before appeared before everyone's eyes. Alas, no matter how much power and wealth one had when they were alive, when it comes to birth, old age, sickness, and death, everything is just fleeting clouds. Life can't be brought, death can't be taken away. If you can't build a tomb in the hearts of others, then you can only build a tomb in the wilderness. In this vast world, I'm afraid that there is only a few feet of space that belongs to me. When Xiaohua saw this small tomb, he immediately thought of Kai Zhuoxia's voice and smile from before, as well as the various experiences of the two people. He couldn't help but ponder in his heart. Looking at Li Zongbao, he was also biting his lips. His body couldn't help but surge with mana. His Taoist robe fluttered in the wind, and even his clenched hands were trembling. After thinking about it for decades, now that the mystery was about to be revealed, even someone as strong as Li Zongbao couldn't help but feel agitated in his heart. It's better to let Kai Quan do it. Kai Haisong looked at the clean tomb. The tombstone in front of the tomb was still engraved with the words, "The tomb of beloved daughter Zhuoxia." He couldn't help but feel a little sad. He knew that although he and the others were Foundation establishment cultivators, if they wanted to take out Kai Zhuoxia's bluestone coffin intact, they had to let Kai Quan and the others, who were guarding the tomb, do it. No need, Junior will try. Xiao Hua waved his hand, stopping Kai Haisong's transmission. Then, without waiting for Fairy Hong Xia and the others to ask more, he made a gesture and his whole body flashed with a yellow brilliance and disappeared into the ground. 5 elements escape technique? When Xiao Hua escaped from Kai Hongfeng's hands, he used the Earth Escape Talisman in front of Kai Haisong. How could Kai Haisong not be familiar with it? However, the Earth Escape technique, which was a consummate skill for escaping before, was now nothing in the hands of Xiao Hua. Just a thought flashed through Kai Haisong's mind, and he felt the ground under his feet suddenly shake. Then, he saw the small tomb quickly split open, like a flower blooming. All the soil was cut off from the tomb, and a bluestone coffin covered with dark green soil slowly rose from the ground. When Xiao Hua's figure appeared from under the bluestone coffin, Kai Haisong couldn't help but groan. This guy's strength is too great. The bluestone coffin was not too heavy, but it couldn't be buried deep. Even if Kai Haisong used his mana, he wouldn't be able to take out the coffin so easily. Xiao Hua flew to the side of the deep pit and carefully placed the bluestone coffin on the ground. However, on this bluestone coffin, the yellow talisman stuck to it had long decayed, leaving only a trace of yellow paper stuck to the black soil. When divine thoughts swept over it, there was no fluctuation of mana. Seeing this, Xiao Hua knew in his heart that if the coffin was Kai Zhuoxia's corpse, it must be white bones now. Immediately, Xiao Hua looked at it again, stretched out his hand, grabbed the fist-sized nail on the coffin, and pulled it out easily. More than a foot long, 8 fist-sized nails were easily pulled out by him. Just when he reached out to open the coffin, Li Zongbao's voice came. "Junior brother Xiao, let me do it personally." "Okay." Xiao Hua replied and immediately retracted his hand, standing at the side and looking at Li Zongbao. Li Zongbao took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and seemed to be calming himself down. Then, he took 2 steps forward, bent down, and touched the bluestone coffin with both hands. The mana in his body surged slightly, and 2 muffled sounds were heard. It was the sound of the coffin hitting each other, and the bluestone coffin was opened a crack. Oh! The mountain peak blew past, and from the crack of the coffin, there was no stench. Xiao Hua's eyes lit up, and like everyone else, he was ecstatic. What is going on? However, when Li Zongbao opened the coffin lid and saw everything inside, he couldn't help but be surprised. Hearing Li Zongbao's shock, Fairy Hong Xia and the others also took a step forward and took a look. They couldn't help but exclaim in shock. -11. Chapter 29:93. Although it was not a skeleton lying in the coffin, it was definitely not Kai Zhuoxia's remains. Instead, it was a male cultivator whose face could not be seen clearly. However, this male cultivator had an extremely long beard and looked like an old man. Ouch! Xiao Hua saw it clearly and immediately exclaimed, because he saw that this male cultivator was wearing a slightly rotten robe from the Imperial Thunder sect. "Senior brother Li, please have mercy. This is Qian Qinghua." Qian Qinghua is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Qian Qinghua? Li Zongbao's spiritual power surged. When he heard Fairy Hong Xia and the others' surprise, he knew that this person was not a disciple of the Kai family. He was already angry and wanted to destroy this person. However, after hearing Xiao Hua's words, he noticed that Qian Qinghua was wearing the Imperial Thunder sect's robe. Then Li Zongbao snorted and shook his hand. When his spiritual power reached out, the blue stone lid immediately turned into powder and fell on Qian Qinghua's body layer by layer. Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly took out the token that Qian Qinghua gave him and shook his hand. Sure enough, the token hovered in the air a few times and suddenly fell into the coffin. Alas! Xiaohua confirmed Qian Qinghua's identity and smiled bitterly. The Imperial Thunder Sect had spent a lot of effort and time to find Qian Qinghua, but no one expected that Qian Qinghua would run into Kai Zhuoxia's coffin. Thinking of this, Xiaohua was shocked again. He hurriedly stretched out his hand and immediately pulled Qian Qinghua out of the coffin. Fortunately, there was only Qian Qinghua and no trace of Kai Zhuoxia. At this moment, Xiaohua was relieved and thought to himself, fortunately, if this guy stayed in the coffin with Kai Zhuoxia for dozens of years, even if Senior Brotherly did not say anything, the Kai family would not let this guy go. This guy has some karma with me, which makes things difficult for me. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua said, Senior Kai, this guy is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. I will take him away. Seeing that Xiaohua recognized Qian Qinghua, Kai Haisong suddenly remembered that when Xiaohua just left the Kai family, Shanghua sect's disciples came to visit him. How could he not know the danger? He hurriedly nodded and said, Nephew, everything is up to you. I don't know anything. Xiaohua shook his hand and put the Qin green flame back into the soul nest. Then, he looked at the ground that he had just dug up and complained in his heart. If Qian Qinghua was in Kai Zhuoxia's coffin, then where did Kai Zhuoxia go? Qian Qinghua would never move Kai Zhuoxia into another coffin. Then, Kai Zhuoxia must be near the green stone coffin. He only cared about taking out the coffin and didn't pay attention to the bones nearby. Even if Kai Zhuoxia's corpse was intact, his reckless action just now might have caused some damage to Kai Zhuoxia's corpse. Junior will go down and take a look. Xiaohua sighed. He looked at Fairy Hongxia, whose face was also not good, and said to Kai Haisong. And Kai Haisong reflexively nodded his head. Xiaohua, this son-in-law, was really too capable. All he could do was nod his head. When Xiaohua entered the ground, everyone's gaze was fixed on the ground, quietly waiting for the result. In less than half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua's figure escaped from the wall of the pit. However, when everyone saw Xiaohua's empty hands, their hearts turned cold. Li Zongbao's heart was even more empty. It was as if his heart had been hollowed out, and there was no trace of it. Junior found it. Xiaohua's figure flew out and hurriedly shouted. Then, he waved his hand and took out a crystal coffin and placed it in front of Li Zongbao. Then, under Li Zongbao's eyes, he carefully took out a corpse covered in mud from the soul nest. Although the corpse was covered in mud, the face had been simply wiped away, revealing a face that was similar to Fairy Hongxia's. The thin eyebrows and long eyelashes were still there. It looked like she was still in a deep sleep when she was just placed in the coffin. Sister, Fairy Hongxia couldn't help but call out. Xiaohua awkwardly reached out his hand and took out a stick of mud. This is Zhuoxia's right arm. Junior. Before Kai Haisong could say anything, Li Zongbao, who had been staring at Kai Zhuoxia's face, saw Kai Zhuoxia's severed arm and couldn't help but stretch his neck and howl. Not only was his howl filled with sorrow, it was also filled with surprise and even deep anticipation. Xiaohua and Fairy Hongxia didn't feel anything, but Kai Haisong and the rest were pale. They hurriedly covered their ears and crouched down, as if they couldn't resist the power of Li Zongbao's howl. Xiaohua frowned slightly. Just as he was about to activate his magic power to protect everyone, Li Zongbao's body suddenly flashed with brilliance. His magic power rippled out like overflowing boiling water. At the same time, a strong pressure was generated from Li Zongbao's head and rushed straight to the sky. The wind and clouds in the sky changed rapidly and countless black clouds surged. Looking at the surroundings, a huge amount of heaven and earth's spiritual energy rushed over crazily. Bits of crystals appeared nearby. Li Zongbao has condensed his core. Xiaohua came to a realization. He knew that the reason why Li Zongbao couldn't condense his core was because of Kai Zhuoxia. Today, when he saw Kai Zhuoxia's corpse, although he didn't know if she was alive or dead, he was overjoyed after seeing her corpse. The damage to her corpse made him feel sad. In between joy and sadness, he suddenly realized something and achieved the opportunity to condense his golden core. Xiaohua was overjoyed. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Li Zongbao's neck amidst the heavenly pressure of condensing his core. Then, without caring about the taboo of the Kai family's burial mound, lightning flashed around him and he rushed up Yang Cauldron Mountain like a thunderbolt. Although Li Zongbao went, the pressure from Yang Cauldron Mountain enveloped Luyang's Kai family and a small part of Luyang for more than 20 days. Although it was only a few weeks, the entire Luyang town was in complete chaos. Not to mention the specks of crystals that were strangely suspended in midair and were more crystalline than common snowflakes, and not to mention the hurricane formed by the heaven and earth spiritual energy that blew everything away. Just the pressure of Li Zongbao's golden core was enough to throw the entire secular world into chaos. In a corner of Luyang near Yang Cauldron Mountain, within a range of about 3 to 5 miles, all animals, humans, and beasts were paralyzed on the ground. None of them could move. Within this range, everyone's hearts were more or less under an incomparable pressure. The feeling of being unable to control life and death filled their minds. Although it was only 2 days later, Xiao Hua, who had come to his senses, hurriedly flew down from Yang Cauldron Mountain and quickly moved the secular people away from Li Zongbao's pressure. However, the impact was huge. Not to mention people who understood the true meaning of life in the midst of life and death. Couples who had broken up with each other were reunited. Not to mention unfilial children who woke up to filial piety under the heavy burden and turned over a new leaf. Not to mention the rascals in Luyang who thought that the gods had descended and turned over a new leaf. Many young children were born with the Tao. It was also a huge change in their lives. Fortunately, the range of Li Zongbao's divine sense was only 20 to 30 miles, and he was condensing his core on Yang Cauldron Mountain. His divine sense only covered a small corner of Luyang. If Xiao Hua had condensed his core, the entire Luyang town would have been covered. The secular people would have nowhere to run even if they wanted to. After Xiao Hua moved the secular people who were affected by the divine sense to a safe place, he sighed. Damn it. No wonder cultivators have to advance in places where there are few people. It's not only because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is abundant there, but also because it doesn't affect others. Then, Xiao Hua hurried back to the Kai family. Although the secular people were affected by Li Zongbao's pressure, they did not need to cultivate after all. Their Tao hearts and Tao foundations would not be affected. However, most of the disciples of the Kai family were cultivators. It was inevitable that their cultivation would be damaged after being under the pressure of a golden core cultivator for a long time. Sure enough, when Xiao Hua entered the Kai family, other than Fairy Hongxia, who was in a slightly better condition, Kai Haisong and the other foundation establishment cultivators were scattered in the spirit tomb. It was as if they had not moved at all after Xiao Hua left with Li Zongbao. Xiao Hua asked Fairy Hongxia briefly and immediately flew to the largest meeting hall in the Kai family. Not only did he activate the array formation of the meeting hall, he also set down the jade talismans of the capital star array. Kai Haisong and the rest, as well as the disciples of the Kai family who were paralyzed, were sent into the meeting hall. After doing all this, Xiao Hua saw that there was nothing left behind. Then, he returned to the Yang Cauldron Mountain to guard Li Zongbao's core condensation. On the 30th day, the oppressive pressure that made it hard for people to breathe slowly weakened. The crystal bead that had been floating dozens of miles away was thrown into the thick whirlpool under the black clouds above the Yang Cauldron Mountain. Seeing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth condense into a whirlpool above Li Zongbao's head, Xiao Hua secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that Li Zongbao had no problems condensing his core condensation. However, he immediately had the urge to jump up and curse. Damn it! Why is it so difficult for me to condense my core condensation? Not only do I need dozens of times more spiritual energy of heaven and earth than Li Zongbao, there's also a lightning tribulation. There are actually 3 lightning tribulations. How can I live like this? After cursing, Xiao Hua released his Buddhist perception to see that Kai Jia and Lu Yang were gradually recovering. He immediately closed his eyes to meditate. After all, everyone's core condensation was different. The celestial phenomena were also different. The heavenly Tao revealed was also different. Xiao Hua was fated to see Li Zongbao condense his core condensation, so he could see the wonders of the parting love treasure mirror and the ruthlessness of the heavenly Tao. After dozens of days, The dark clouds that had been pressing down on the Yang Cauldron Mountain slowly dissipated. A ray of sunlight that was like a sharp sword shot out from the clouds and shone on Li Zongbao's body. His snow-white hair refracted bits of golden light, and an indescribable power was emitted from his body. Li Zongbao slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were completely pale, and there was no trace of black in them. A kind of coldness, mercilessness, and austere aura emerged from his pale eyes, causing one's heart to turn cold. In just a few breaths, a little blackness was born in this paleness. It was like the rare moonlight in the night sky, and it immediately dispelled the desolation. Gradually, the emotions of joy, anger, sorrow, and joy slowly appeared along with the appearance of the black pupils. -11. Chapter 2994. Senior Brotherly? Xiaohua saw Li Zongbao the moment he opened his eyes. He could clearly see the ruthlessness in Li Zongbao's eyes. At this moment, he slowly got up and walked over. Xiaohua, Li Zongbao glanced at Xiaohua. His eyes were as sharp as lightning. The first thing he said was, "Is Shuxia dead or alive? I'll let Senior Brotherly know." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "Once you release your aura of condensing your core, other than me, who else can move? I'm here to protect you. I really don't know if Kaijua Xiao is dead or alive." Li Zongbao snorted and released his spiritual sense. Without calling Xiaohua, he flew down from the Yang Cauldron Mountain. Xiaohua smacked his lips and looked at the unfamiliar back of Li Zongbao. He shook his head and flew down as well. At this moment, the Kai family had already returned to its original order. However, every disciple who saw Li Zongbao had a face full of respect and fear. They all stood far away and avoided him. In the meeting hall, beside a crystal coffin stood Fairy Hongxia and the rest. "Is Shuxia dead or alive?" Li Zongbao entered the meeting hall and asked. "Senior Brotherly." Fairy Hongxia and the rest turned around and bowed. "Congratulations on condensing your core, Senior Brother." Unexpectedly, Li Zongbao did not answer. He walked towards the crystal coffin expressionlessly. Walking to the front of the transparent crystal coffin, Li Zongbao saw Kaijua Xiao's beautiful sleeping face, as well as her long eyelashes and long hair that almost covered her entire body. Only then did a trace of a smile appear on Li Zongbao's face. Moreover, his eyes were filled with warmth as he muttered to himself, "Shuxia, you are actually so beautiful, but you're still modest in front of me. Sigh, I don't want cold beauty. I only want living ugliness." However, Li Zongbao pushed his hand and was about to lift the lid of the crystal coffin. But at this moment, Xiaohua's slender hand reached out and pressed on the coffin. He said calmly, "Senior Brotherly, wait a moment. Let Hongxia explain." Li Zongbao did not stop. However, he did not lift the lid. Only then did he stop. He turned around and looked at Fairy Hongxia. "Senior Brotherly." Faced with Li Zongbao's cold gaze, Fairy Hongxia's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly said, "I've already checked. Elder sister hasn't been revived. Not only is there no heartbeat or breathing, even his body is cold." That is, a cold light flashed in Li Zongbao's eyes. The people around him trembled. "No," Kai Haisong hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist Li, although Shuxia did not come back to life, but she is not dead either." "Why?" Li Zongbao stared straight at Kai Haisong, his gaze as sharp as a sword. Kai Haisong suppressed his shock and said, "Shuxia's skin color is normal, and her hair is still growing. If she's already dead, not to mention other things, her hair must have withered and her body must have perished. Then is she dead or alive?" Li Zongbao asked coldly. No one dared to answer. "As far as this Xiao knows," Xiaohua indifferently said, "Kaijua Xia is neither alive nor dead. He seems to be in a very strange state." "So, congratulations, Senior Brotherly. At least Kaijua Xia is not dead. Her body is still here, and her body is also intact. Even her soul is not in the netherworld. Her resurrection should be easier than Ziyi. Of course, Kaijua Xia's right arm is this Xiao's fault. This Xiao will return her an intact arm after she comes back to life." Li Zongbao glanced at Xiaohua indifferently, then turned to look at the crystal coffin and asked in a low voice, "What is going on with this crystal coffin?" Senior Brotherly, this crystal coffin originally belonged to Jin Quan Shan Tu Hong. Xiao Hua replied in a low voice. Li Zongbao's eyebrows twitched, as if he thought of something. Also, Senior Kai, bring everyone out for a moment. This Xiao wants to check on Kai Zhuoxia's situation again. Xiao Hua turned his head and ordered. Oh? Kai Haisong was slightly stunned, but Fairy Hong Xia was overjoyed and hurriedly said, "Okay, we will leave now?" Senior Brotherly, you go out too. Xiao Hua said indifferently, "This Xiao will not leave." Li Zongbao shook his head. From now on, this Xiao will not be separated from Zhuoxia. Xiao Hua urged his magic power to restrain Li Zongbao, but he immediately withdrew his magic power and said indifferently, "If you want Kai Zhuoxia to come back to life, you should hurry up and leave." Li Zongbao suddenly raised his head and stared at Xiao Hua for a moment. Xiao Hua was not afraid and directly faced him. What a joke. Not to mention that Li Zongbao had just condensed his core. Even if he was in the late stage of gold core, in Xiao Hua's eyes, he was just a gold core. Seeing that Xiao Hua did not shrink back, Li Zongbao hesitated slightly and was the last to walk out of the meeting hall. Then Xiao Hua made a grabbing motion, and the capital star array of the meeting hall was activated. In the entire hall, only Xiao Hua and the crystal coffin were left. Sigh, fellow Kai. Years have passed since we parted, and now we are once again on different paths. Xiao Hua walked to the front of the crystal coffin and stared at Kai Zhuoxia's lifelike face. He whispered, "This Xiao knows that you may still have a chance to live, but this Xiao really does not know where this chance comes from. However, since the one who tied the bell should untie it, then this Xiao can try his best." After saying that, Xiao Hua reached out and opened the crystal coffin. He stretched out his thumb and middle finger and placed it on Kai Zhuoxia's left wrist. He closed his eyes, and after a moment, he slightly frowned and released a strand of soul thread, which very cautiously landed between Kai Zhuoxia's eyebrows. See, when Xiao Hua's soul thread rushed into Kai Zhuoxia's soul, he saw the situation of the mysterious dark cloud and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He saw that Kai Zhuoxia's mysterious dark cloud was already in pieces, as if she had died long ago. But the strange thing was that the mysterious dark cloud was now wrapped in a faint layer of water. This water was sparkling and translucent, flashing with a faint, unknown brilliance. It flowed very slowly outside the mysterious dark cloud. The scattered and mysterious dark clouds seemed to be condensed by this water bloom. This water, is it the effect of that willow branch? Xiao Hua was somewhat baffled. That strand of soul thread gradually approached the water. Boom! A loud sound rang out. That soul thread had just touched the water when it exploded in Xiao Hua's soul, and a kind of boundless and desolate feeling emerged from Xiao Hua's soul. A seemingly boundless netherworld sea appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. There were countless corpses in the sea, and waves of blood soared to the sky. From time to time, there were strange, huge, and ugly netherworld beasts rushing out of the sea, swallowing hundreds and thousands of corpses in one gulp. Boundless, without end. Without a boat, without a bridge, I cannot cross it. A kind of indescribable pain emerged from Xiao Hua's heart, and a kind of feeling of absolute powerlessness filled Xiao Hua's body at the same time. Woo-woo-woo, suddenly, there seemed to be a kind of Sanskrit sound, and also seemed to be a kind of golden rune, and there was a slight feeling of armor inscriptions. A three-colored brilliance pierced through the sea of bitterness, rushing to the other side of the sea of bitterness. However, that three-colored bridge had just appeared when a wave of blood struck. Xiao Hua's soul thread was shattered, and all of his feelings disappeared in an instant. Hiss! Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air. His back was covered in a layer of cold sweat, and he didn't dare to extend that second strand of soul thread. Taking out the willow branch, Xiao Hua's divine sense, Buddhist sense, and even soul sense probed, but they were all empty. Even where the soul thread fell, it still couldn't wrap around. When Xiao Hua opened his Dharma eyes, in those already somewhat transformed Dharma eyes, there was a three-colored rainbow bridge in Xiao Hua's hand. Sure enough, it's this thing that's causing trouble. Xiao Hua understood. Unfortunately, he still waved it several times on Kai Zhuoxia's corpse, but the willow branch didn't move at all. Of course, Kai Zhuoxia's corpse also didn't change. Xiaohua scratched his ears and cheeks. He clearly knew that this thing would work, but he just didn't know how to use it. Forget it. I'm afraid the opportunity hasn't come yet. Xiaohua was dejected. He was only a golden core cultivator, and his soul cultivation had just reached Ming Ruotian. He was still too far away from being able to see through life and death. Thinking about this, Xiaohua was about to put the willow branch into his space, but at this moment, he hesitated. He thought of the previous water bloom, thought of the Sanskrit sound and the netherworld sea within the water bloom, and flipped his hand, sending the willow branch into the Buddha Sarira. It really did fall into the clear water bottle. Swish, a faint Buddhist light emerged from the Buddha Sarira, and the entire clear water bottle slightly swelled. The willow branch in the clear water bottle suddenly gained a layer of holiness. This willow branch is a Buddhist artifact? Xiaohua suddenly realized. Xiaohua opened the capital star formation, and Li Zongbao was guarding the entrance. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't look happy, he didn't ask anything and quickly rushed to the crystal coffin. "How is it?" Fairy Hongxia was the second to come over and asked in a low voice. "Sai, Zhuoxia really didn't die, but it's still very difficult to resurrect her. With my current cultivation, I can't do anything." Xiaohua sighed, and with a grab, he was about to take out the capital star formation's jade talisman. Fairy Hongxia snorted coldly, turned around, and walked over. Xiaohua was stunned, but soon understood. After thinking for a while, he took out a blank jade talisman and recorded the method to use the capital star formation. He quickly chased after her, and with a smile as if he was presenting a treasure, he said, "Hongxia, why are you giving it to me? I don't want it." Fairy Hongxia glared at him unhappily. "Hee," Xiaohua laughed. "I've already given you what I gave you. This is what you gave me. Who are the two of us?" Fairy Hongxia was originally worried about Kai Zhuoxia's life, but when she saw Xiaohua's expression, she knew that she would be fine. Only then did she glance at him and take the jade talisman. Kai Haisong naturally followed beside the two of them, but Kai Haisong's eyes were only looking ahead. It wasn't clear if he didn't see them, or if he was only concerned about Kai Zhuoxia. "Xiaohua, what should we do now?" Everyone walked in front of the crystal coffin and took a look. Kai Haisong turned around and asked Xiaohua. "There's nothing else, we can only wait." Xiaohua pointed at Kai Zhuoxia and said, "At this moment, she's neither dead nor alive, and her lifespan is very long. I'm afraid that you and I can't compare to her. Once the opportunity comes, she can be resurrected. The Kai family only needs to protect her body." -11. Chapter 2995. How can I let the Kai family keep Zhuoxia's body? Without waiting for Kai Haisong to speak, Li Zongbao reached out his hand and lifted the crystal coffin. Unfortunately, just as his hand touched the coffin, Xiaohua also reached out his hand. The crystal coffin seemed to be cast from copper and iron and could no longer be lifted from the stone table. "Senior brother Li," Xiaohua said indifferently, "this matter still needs to be discussed with the head of the Kai family." Li Zongbao coldly glanced at Xiaohua's finger on the crystal coffin and actually raised his head to look at Xiaohua's face. His eyes were no longer like before, only cold and black. Xiaohua's eyes narrowed. Just like before, he faced the increasingly cold gaze. He knew that Li Zongbao's mind was already damaged. Now that he saw the half-dead Kai Zhuoxia, not only did the parting treasured mirror suffer a backlash, even the weapon spirit of the immortal slaughtering whip suffered a backlash. Especially now that Li Zongbao had just stepped into the core formation realm, his realm was not stable yet. The feeling of power in his palm had yet to fade from Li Zongbao's heart. He really might not be afraid to fight with him. Zongbao, Kai Haisong's mind raced. He turned to look at Fairy Hongxia, Kai Haisong, and the rest. They exchanged glances and secretly nodded. He hurriedly shouted, "Although Zhuoxia is my beloved daughter, she suffered grievances in my Kai family. Even after death, her corpse was humiliated by others. My Kai family feels that we are not worthy of keeping Zhuoxia's corpse. If Zongbao is willing, you can take it away. However, I ask Zongbao to be considerate. If, by any chance, please send Juxia back to my Luyangkai family. Here, at the very least, she still has her ancestors and us to accompany her. Li Zongbao responded indifferently, not even nodding his head. Hearing Kai Haisong's words, Xiao Hua gently removed his 2 fingers from the crystal coffin. Li Zongbao reached out and took out a storage pouch, wanting to put it in. Unfortunately, although Kai Zhuoxiao was half dead, her soul was strangely well. How could he put it in the storage pouch? Xiao Hua sighed and took out a spirit storage pouch and handed it over. Li Zongbao did not raise his head. He kept the crystal coffin and thought for a moment. He stretched out his hand and said to Xiao Hua, "Give me the jade scroll that Jing Apple Village Elder Jilan gave you." Xiao Hua was stunned and asked curiously, "When did Jilan give me a jade scroll?" "It was used in the records of soul cultivators." Li Zongbao replied indifferently. "I've heard him say that it recorded the location where a Dao sect senior had fallen." "Oh, that's a soul cultivator's bone." Xiao Hua suddenly understood that Elder Jilan had mentioned an extremely dangerous place. "What do you want that for? You don't cultivate your soul, so how can you understand?" "I don't understand, but you do," Li Zongbao said resolutely. "Even if I have to break through millions of Ming mountains, travel through the 3 kingdoms of immortal cultivators, chase up to the 9th heaven, and descend to the 9th hell, I will find a way to resurrect Juxia. That dangerous place is indeed located in the depths of millions of Ming mountains. I'm determined to explore it." Ah, Xiao Hua instantly felt that Li Zongbao's figure was incomparably tall. He understood that with the foundation of the Utopia faction, Li Zongbao could cultivate to the nascent soul stage, or even the separating spirit stage without any suspense. However, Li Zongbao also understood that relying on the inheritance of the Utopia faction alone was not enough to resurrect a dead person. He could only learn from others' strong points and search for thousands of families. That was why he decided to go to millions of Ming mountains. Senior Brotherly, the millions of Ming mountains that we went to was only a corner of the real Ming mountains. Moreover, we were protected by Ziming and Xiao Mao, so we returned safely. What Elder Jilan said. I'm afraid that the so-called depths of Wu Ming Mountains are rarely entered by ordinary Dao sect cultivators. If you rashly go in, give it to me. Li Zongbao did not listen to his advice at all, and said coldly. Xiao Hua was not satisfied and insisted, as for Kai Zhuoxia, I naturally don't have a way to resurrect her now, but I'm completely confident that I can resurrect her in the future. You don't need to find a way to resurrect her by yourselves. Fairy Hong Xia was still fine. But when Kai Haisong and the others heard this, they turned pale with fright. Controlling life and death, that was a great magical power that even immortals did not dare to boast about. Xiao Hua was only a golden core cultivator now, but he dared to say such a big thing. Who would not be shocked after hearing this? Give it to me, Li Zongbao said again. Xiao Hua looked at Li Zongbao and narrowed his eyes again, as if he was thinking about something. However, after a while, he reached out his hand and took out the grayish bone. He used his soul consciousness to explore it, and then recorded the things inside in a jade slip and handed it to Li Zongbao. Li Zongbao took it and used his soul consciousness to take a look. Then, he carefully put the jade slip away and activated his magic power, flying out of the meeting hall. Senior Brotherly, where are you going? The Utopia faction or the millions of Ming mountains? Xiao Hua hurriedly shouted and chased after him. Roar! A mournful howl suddenly sounded from the side of Yang Cauldron Mountain, and a heroic and sorrowful singing voice came from the sky. My heart is in my chest. Where is thy heart? Thy heart is not in heaven and earth. My heart is lonely, so what if it is in my chest? Thy heart is in the 9 heavens. My heart becomes an immortal. Thy heart is in the 9 underworlds. My heart is in the devil. My heart wants to be one with thy heart. The ends of the world can't help. My heart wants to sleep with thy heart. Gods and demons kill. As the voice faded away, Li Zongbao's lonely figure also gradually disappeared. Xiao Hua could certainly catch up with Li Zongbao, but how could he catch up with Li Zongbao's infatuation? Although Elder Sister's life was short, she met such a lover. Even if Elder Sister is in the 9 underworlds, her heart will be at ease. She didn't live her life in vain. Fairy Hong Xia and the others chased after him and also looked at the sky, murmuring, "How many female cultivators in this world have such good fortune?" Hong Xia, do you think senior brotherly will return to the Utopia faction or the millions of Ming Mountains? Xiao Hua slightly bit his lips and whispered, "Is this important?" Fairy Hong Xia asked, "With elder sister's company, senior brotherly will no longer be lonely in this world." Sigh, yes. Xiao Hua sighs in his heart and reaches out to grab Fairy Hong Xia's hand. Unfortunately, he grabs nothing but air. Fairy Hong Xia dodges Xiao Hua and says to Kai Haisong, "Father, you must keep elder sister's matter and Xiao Hua's matter a secret. These are all important matters. If a trace of it is leaked, the Kai family of Lu Yang will be in unprecedented danger." Then, Fairy Hong Xia passed the jade slip with the capital star array to Kai Haisong and said, "Also, the array outside the Kai family is too clumsy. Only the array in the meeting hall is the real defensive array. If you encounter any danger, you can hide in it. This is the way to control it." Great. Kai Haisong was overjoyed. He knew the power of the capital star array very well. It was a divine array that could resist the power of the core formation stage. "I don't dare to delay any longer. The war is about to end. I have to rush back to the Huanhua sect." Fairy Hong Xia bowed, turned around and flew into the sky. "It can't be?" Xiao Hua, who was standing at the side, was dumbfounded. He did not expect that Fairy Hong Xia would actually leave just like Li Zongbao. After a slight hesitation, he hurriedly bowed towards Kai Haisong and the rest, before his figure shot up into the air. However, after flying for several dozen feet, Xiao Hua stopped again. With a flick of his wrist, he took out a storage pouch and tossed it to Kai Haisong. "Senior Xiao, these are some rice seeds. You can distribute them or sell them to all parts of the country of Xi. However, if there is a barren place, you still have to give them away. You can't accept spirit stones. In addition, the Kai family must compensate for the places in Luoyang that were damaged by senior brother Li. The required silver and other items can be deducted from the rice seeds." This. Kai Haisong saw the storage bag fall and was really puzzled. He didn't know how to deal with it. A cultivator who cared about the secular world. This was the first time he met someone like that. Even though Fairy Hong Xia ran fast, could she hide from Xiao Hua? Similarly, they were flying towards the teleportation array of Linyu Town. In less than half a cup of tea's time, Fairy Hong Xia's graceful and seductive figure appeared in Xiao Hua's vision. Looking at this familiar figure, Xiao Hua's heart was burning with passion. Xiao Hua's harvest from the millions of Ming Mountains was bountiful, far beyond his imagination. However, along the way, with Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao accompanying him, the sweet journey in Xiao Hua's heart was completely over. Now that he finally had a chance to be alone with Fairy Hong Xia, and they weren't in Luoyang, how could Xiao Hua not be distracted? Therefore, Xiao Hua didn't fly too fast and just followed behind Fairy Hong Xia. Seeing that the sky was dark and they were in the wilderness, Xiao Hua activated the transcendence energy in his body and pounced towards Fairy Hong Xia like a flying wolf. When Xiao Hua hugged Fairy Hong Xia, a kind of thirst arose from the bottom of Xiao Hua's heart. Xiao Hua lowered his voice and growled, "Stop, you're a bandit." After saying that, Xiao Hua carried Fairy Hong Xia's body and flew towards the place he had set his sights on. If it was someone else, Fairy Hong Xia would definitely struggle and even blame Xiao Hua. But this time, no matter how Xiao Hua's tongue licked the edge of Fairy Hong Xia's earlobe, she didn't have any reaction. Sensing the abnormality of Fairy Hong Xia, and feeling that although Fairy Hong Xia's body was still warm in his embrace, it wasn't as hot as before. Xiao Hua's heart turned cold and his body stiffened unconsciously. He asked in a low voice, "Wife? Since when have I been your wife?" Fairy Hong Xia asked indifferently, "Wife, what do you mean?" Xiao Hua felt that something was wrong. "Aren't you my wife? Why didn't you say this in front of senior martial brother Li and junior martial brother Xiao?" Fairy Hong Xia didn't turn her head. She just looked at the darkness in the distance and asked faintly. Xiao Hua gently turned Fairy Hong Xia's body over. Looking at Fairy Hong Xia's teary eyes, he said seriously, "It's not that I don't want to say it. It's just that you and I haven't done the dual cultivation ceremony yet. If I call you that, won't it tarnish your reputation?" Hee, calling me wifey would tarnish my reputation. Then, wouldn't you tarnish my reputation even more by hugging me and doing something lewd with me? Fairy Hong Xia sneered coldly. This, Xiao Hua was speechless. The hand that was hugging Fairy Hong Xia slipped unconsciously. Fairy Hong Xia's heart seemed to have turned cold along with that hand. -11. Chapter 2996. You only care about your momentary happiness. When have you ever thought about me? Fairy Hong Xia continued. You have a junior sister, a close friend, and a disciple. How are you going to treat me? My wife. Xiao Hua was truly speechless. He did not expect that after so many days, Fairy Hong Xia's rebound would be so severe. Before the dual cultivation ceremony, it's better for you to call me Junior Sister Hong Xia. Fairy Hong Xia said indifferently, I know what you're thinking. Naturally, I can do as you wish. However, today is the last day. I'm afraid we don't have any more chances. The past may have been sweet. Today may be bitter. But all of this will slowly dissipate with the night. What do you mean? The fire in Xiao Hua's heart was completely extinguished. Not much. Fairy Hong Xia stroked her hair and said faintly, For my dead sister, Senior Brother Li did not get to know a single female cultivator for dozens of years. He is known as the #1 person below Gold Core. The number of female cultivators who want to dual cultivate with him is probably more than the number of junior sisters you know, right? However, he has never even looked at them properly. Today, for the sake of my sister's resurrection, he actually abandoned his sect and rushed to the Ming Mountains alone. Such a person with such deep affection is rarely seen in the world. Xiao Hua, I will not ask you to be like Senior Brother Li, to not look at others for my sake. However, I beg you, please consider my feelings. Don't get to know more female cultivators. I really do not have the slightest bit of confidence or dignity under these meaningless challenges. As Fairy Hong Xia spoke, her tears flowed down in droplets. Xiao Hua did not expect that he would hurt Fairy Hong Xia so much. For a moment, he did not know what to say. Do you know Junior Sister Mingyue from my Huan Hua sect? Mingyue? I don't know. Xiao Hua shook his head slightly. No impression? What does she have to do with me? Junior Sister Mingyue has deep feelings for Nameless. If she knows that you are Nameless, I'm afraid she will become another good junior sister of yours. Fairy Hong Xia said sadly, although I am open-minded, how can I allow a junior sister to be my junior sister? How can she watch her lover and her martial aunt dual cultivate together? See, Xiao Hua finally understood. He finally understood why Fairy Hong Xia was so conflicted about how many female cultivators she knew. Red Cloud. Xiao Hua raised his hand and said, This Xiao hereby swears a blood oath. Apart from you and Xue Xue. No, Fairy Hong Xia shook her head slightly and stopped Xiao Hua. The so-called blood oath is nothing but a void. This concubine is not willing to use this blood oath to bind you. This concubine only wants your one and only love for this concubine, as long as your true heart. How can the blood oath related to cultivation see your true nature? Then, what do you think we should do? Xiao Hua was completely out of ideas. Xiaolang. Fairy Hong Xia opened her teary eyes and looked at Xiao Hua. She said word by word, Our relationship has progressed too quickly. Although we were in love with each other and fell in love at first sight, in reality, the time we spent together was very short. Our relationship might not be solid, and it might even be maintained in the joy of dual cultivation. Therefore, this concubine feels that you and I should separate for a period of time. Both of us should calm down and think about each other's thoughts. Of course, don't worry, Xiaolang. Even if you don't want this concubine will not look at anyone else in this lifetime. However, if this concubine can see clearly, then this concubine will definitely not stay by your side. This concubine has her own proud and aloof heart. Huff, Xiao Hua let out a deep breath. He had finally encountered his first relationship problem in this lifetime. Based on what Fairy Hong Xia said, if he couldn't solve it well, she wouldn't be with him in the future. Moreover, after the Great War of Sword and Dao, the three kingdoms of cultivators will be defeated. The cultivation sects of the three kingdoms will definitely be in chaos. The structure of each sect will have to be reorganized. One after another, handsome cultivators will spring up like bamboo shoots after the rain. Xiaohua, although you are blessed by the heavens, there will always be someone better than you. There are many people who are more outstanding than you, who are more favored by the heavens than you. You should comprehend what you have learned from the millions of Ming mountains and take a step further. You should step into the realm of nascent soul grandmaster as soon as possible. Fairy Hong Xia continued, this concubine has also obtained the inheritance of the phoenix. The reason why this concubine didn't reveal it in front of the Qing Yang's Kai family head, nor did I tell father, was because I wanted to comprehend it quietly and fully accept the inheritance of the phoenix. When the storm suddenly rises in the future, this concubine will be able to stand on high and turn the tide. Perhaps this is an opportunity for you and me to cultivate on our own. This concubine seems to remember that you once said, it's better to forget each other in the pugilistic world than to help each other in times of need. Perhaps only when we are far away from each other can we see each other's needs, each other's love, and each other's sincerity. I understand. Xiaohua took a deep breath. He felt his nose turning sour. He reached out and hugged Fairy Hongxia again. He whispered, this Xiao will do as you say. This Xiao will let you see this Xiao's heart for you. This Xiao will also let you know that this Xiao is the heavens beyond the heavens. This Xiao is an outsider. In this Xiaoyu continent, only Xiaohua is supreme. As he spoke, Xiaohua stretched out his lips and gently kissed Fairy Hongxia's forehead, eyes, ears, nose, cheeks, and chin. Finally, he heavily kissed her sweet lips. When he deeply tasted the bitter tears on her lips, he decisively left. With a long roar, he rushed into the sky. Lightning flashed around his body. With a rumbling sound, he rushed towards the distant Linyu town. Xiaohua. Seeing Xiaohua turn into lightning and fly away, Fairy Hongxia's heart suddenly became empty. Empty like nothingness. Empty like there was no falling. Empty like the pitch-black night. Suddenly, a kind of sadness welled up in Fairy Hongxia's heart. Her tears involuntarily fell, drowning the entire night. Coming out from the last transfer array, Xiaohua's heart still felt like a huge rock was pressing down on it. Although he left Fairy Hongxia in a very carefree manner and said those bold words, and although he knew Fairy Hongxia's bitterness in his heart, he really did not understand Fairy Hongxia's thoughts. He, Huang Mingxiang, Ziming, Juxia, and even himself did not know about Mingyu's matter. Why did he give Fairy Hongxia so much pressure? He also never thought of dual cultivation with these female cultivators. Saying a few words, walking a few steps with them, what's the point? Even if it's just holding hands, what's the point? Ziming might not even be able to see him in the future. Consoling him, what's the point? And all these, Shui seems to have never said anything about it, right? Forget it. Xiaohua looked at the deathly pale clear sky. The wisps of faint clouds seemed to also carry a bitter expression. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and say, perhaps Red Cloud was right. Only time and distance can test one's heart. After sorting out his emotions, Xiaohua was just about to fly up when a faintly discernible divine sense strangely swept over. Who is it? Xiaohua sneered. His soul pierced out following the divine sense. Ioyo. An extremely exaggerated cry came from the sky. At the same time, a figure appeared. That figure was hugging his head with his hands, appearing to be in extreme pain. Second senior brother, you're really like a ghost that won't disperse. Wherever this Xiao goes, you'll find me. Xiaohua glanced at him, seemingly unmoved, and said indifferently. That person was naturally the heavenly demon sect's Zhang Qingxiao. When Zhang Qingxiao heard Xiaohua's words, he released his hands in astonishment and asked curiously, who provoked our imperial thunder sect's nameless? Do you not want your head anymore? No one provoked me. Xiaohua also said indifferently, why are you looking for me? Io, if no one provoked you, then you must have eaten a fireball talisman. Zhang Qingxiao pointed at him and said, look at your face. It's as if everyone in the country of Shi owes you 3 low-grade spirit stones. If there's nothing else, I'm leaving. Xiao Hua urged his magic power, as if he was really going to leave. Io, didn't someone say that he wanted a nascent soul cultivation method? I worked so hard and racked my brains to get it, but he doesn't want it. What a disappointment. Zhang Qingxiao didn't stop him. She only said one sentence, and Xiao Hua obediently stopped. Give it to me. Xiao Hua still weakly stretched out his hand. Don't. Zhang Qingxiao smiled and said, First, let me see Lu Er. We'll talk about the rest later. Xiao Hua knew that Zhang Qingxiao and Xiao Xinrui were both concerned. He didn't dare to neglect and took Zhang Lu Er out of the space. Seeing that Zhang Lu Er still hadn't changed, Zhang Qingxiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Little junior brother, didn't you promise to wake Lu Er up? How many years has it been? Why hasn't there been any news? Io, it's not that I don't want to help. Xiao Hua said helplessly. That expert doesn't have time now. We can only wait until after the Path Sword battle. Speaking of this, Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he asked, Oh right, did Sky Patrol City really fall into the hands of sword cultivators? What's the situation now? This has nothing to do with you. Zhang Qingxiao waved her hand and looked at Zhang Luer with pity. You'd better think of a way to wake Luer up. However, I reckon it'll be soon. Seeing that Zhang Qingxiao didn't say anything, Xiao Hua could only wave the spirit storage bag in his hand and put Zhang Luer into the space. Secondly, Zhang Qingxiao smiled and said, You have to tell me who provoked you. I'm very curious, in this world, who can make you so upset? Io. Xiao Hua sighed deeply, looked around and said, Let's go, find a secluded place. Yes, it seemed that other than Zhang Qingxiao, Xiao Hua could tell these things to others, right? When Zhang Qingxiao heard this, she unconsciously curled her lips and said coldly, Little junior brother, I'm not talking about you, but you're giving too much face to Kai Hongxia. And this girl is too pretentious. There's a saying that if you don't court death, you won't die. If you court death, you'll die. Hee, letting go of a cultivator like you, who has a promising future, instead of pestering you, she actually let go. This kind of trick of loosening the reins only to grasp them better is really too childish. Now, who knows how many female cultivators in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation are looking forward to dual cultivation with Nameless. When the names of Terrifying Phoenix and Nameless are revealed, you can sit in the myriad Thunder Valley and wait for others to propose marriage. -11.